As Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji settles into his third term, India's global influence is rising rapidly. Amidst global uncertainty due to multiple conflicts, India has emerged as a responsible world power, offering leadership that could end human misery.
In a multipolar world, India represents the voice of the global south, leading the world in building the best-in-class digital public infrastructure and solutions to address the growing climate challenges that we all face. It was under India's G20 presidency that the African Union became an equal stakeholder in determining the future course for two-thirds of humanity.
As the world's fastest growing economy, India is now shouldering the burden of global growth. While most developed economies are either witnessing tepid growth or headed towards recession, India is set to remain on a 7% plus growth highway and is on track to be the world's third largest economy by 2028. And in these uncertain times, the world turns to India for growth, stability, and leadership.
Now, it's in this backdrop that NDTV proudly presents its flagship event, our flagship event, the NDTV World Summit 2024. And Gauri, it means the world to us. The theme, the India Century. We are privileged and honored to have the Honorable Prime Minister with us today. He'll deliver the keynote address in just a few minutes.
Indeed, Vishnu. The NDTV World Summit is co-presented by Adani Group, powered by Pernod Ricard, co-powered by GE Aerospace, supercharged by Charge Zone. Knowledge partner Amrita Vishwa Vidyapeetham, e-mobility partner Billion E, community empowerment partner Kamla Ankibai Kamandiram Kovani Trust, associate partner FedEx, beverage partner Le Cafe, associate partner N3M Foundation, insurance partner LIC, influencer partner Who's That 360, print partner Hindustan Times, and state partners, governments of Uttar Pradesh, Uttarakhand, and Chhattisgarh.
Shri Narendra Modi, the Honorable Prime Minister of India, has arrived in the hotel. He'll be joining us at the Darbar Hall in just a few minutes from now. Good morning and welcome to NDTV's flagship event. We are delighted to have the Prime Minister of India with us. Modi ji, thank you, sir, very much for being with us. The NDTV World Summit is called the India Century. Today we delve into an exemplary showcase of diplomacy and strategic foresight that have come to define the India story on the world stage.
Indeed, and as the world's largest democracy, India has proven its mettle on the international stage with astute foreign policy maneuvers that define the core vision, India first. In recent developments, India has navigated complex geopolitical waters with the finesse of seasoned chess grandmasters.
From strengthening ties with key economic powers in the ASEAN region to engaging in constructive dialogue with Western nations, India's approach has been one of balance and of mutual respect. The country's neighborhood-first policy continues to foster peace and cooperation, turning potential conflict into opportunities for regional development.
Moreover, India's leadership in the G20 has pushed for sustainable development goals, emphasizing climate change and digital inclusivity, reflecting a foreign policy that is not just about immediate gains, but long-term global stability. Our vaccine diplomacy during the global health crisis has saved countless lives, showcasing a blend of soft power and humanitarian concern.
Today and tomorrow, we celebrate India's foreign policy, which has not only elevated our global stature, but also serves as a blueprint for how nations can engage with the world in the 21st century. May I now take this opportunity to invite NDTV's Editor-in-Chief, Sanjay Pugalia, to the stage. Sanjay ji.
I think we get off the stage.
Namaskar. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I want to welcome Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji and Prime Minister of Bhutan, His Excellency Dasho Shering Tobge, former Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Lord David Cameron, and distinguished guests. With immense pleasure and gratitude, I extend a very warm welcome from NDTV to you all. Allow me to digress from the script for a minute. This morning I read a statement by Mr. Putin that Mr. Modi is my friend and I trust him. He's saying this just before your travel to Russia tomorrow, I know, is pregnant with some serious, far-reaching developments. Coming back to my scripted speech, ladies and gentlemen, despite tectonic shifts in the global order, India, under the able leadership of Honorable Prime Minister Modi, continues to remain extremely stable and a voice of sanity and championing the cause of world peace. India's global influence continues to expand, reshaping both geopolitical dynamics and economic landscapes. At a time when the world is facing two major conflicts in Europe and West Asia, India has emerged as a responsible and fiercely independent global power committed to world peace. Under Prime Minister Modi, India is filling a vacuum and offering leadership. The emergence of the global South is also a testimony to these changing times. It is within this context that NDTV proudly presents its flagship event, NDTV World Summit 2024, the India Century. This summit is not merely a conversation platform, it is a confluence of ideas that will provide a roadmap for the future. And continuing with NDTV's legacy of pioneering media, we are also launching our new product, NDTV World. This platform will serve as a global broadcaster with a fresh perspective on global issues. We are currently available in more than 60 countries. This reflects NDTV's global footprint, reaching out to 600 million viewers and readers worldwide. 600 million, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, a warm welcome to all thought leaders. We look forward to their valuable insights on the India Century and other challenging issues of our time. On a personal note, एक बात मैं प्रधानमंत्री जी को याद दिलाना चाहता हूँ। ठीक 11 साल पहले इसी सभागार में मैंने आपका ऐसे ही कार्यक्रम में स्वागत किया था और उसमें आपने नए इंडिया का जो विजन रखा था उसको 10 साल में आपने एग्जीक्यूट करके दिखा दिया है। यही वजह है कि तीसरे टर्म में आप देखेंगे कि प्रधानमंत्री अब तक 8 यात्राएं विदेश की कर चुके हैं और कल 9वीं यात्रा पर वो जाने वाले हैं। इन यात्राओं के जो डॉट्स हैं वो आज हम कनेक्ट करते हुए सुनेंगे कि ग्लोबल गुड के लिए प्रधानमंत्री मोदी का विजन क्या है और मोदी लेड इंडिया किस तरीके से एक नया ग्लोबल ऑर्डर सेट करने जा रहा है। एक बात बताना और बहुत ज़रूरी है जो आप लोगों को पता भी है, एक जो मोस्ट रेफर्ड ग्लोबल पॉपुलैरिटी ट्रैकर है पॉलिटिकल लीडर्स का, 42 देशों को ट्रैक करता है, उसमें सितंबर महीने में मोदी जी की रेटिंग 73% बढ़ गई है। लेडीज एंड जेंटलमैन, ये मामूली बात नहीं है कि जब एंटी इनकम्बेंसी की लहर है पूरी दुनिया में, जो करंट पॉलिटिकल रिजीम होता है उसके खिलाफ, उसके बावजूद भारत की जनता किसी प्रधानमंत्री को तीसरी बार गवर्न करने के लिए कहे और वो गवर्न करें इस तरीके से कि जिसमें ये तीसरा टर्म डोमेस्टिक पॉलिसी ही नहीं बल्कि भारत के फॉरेन पॉलिसी रेजीम के तौर पर नए ढंग से डिफाइन होने जा रहा है। आई नाउ रिक्वेस्ट द ऑनरेबल प्राइम मिनिस्टर टू जॉइन अस on the stage to launch NDTV World and address the summit. Sir.
In today's interconnected world, India's voice is more crucial than ever. When India speaks, the world listens. At NDTV World, we are that voice, bringing you intelligent and insightful news from India and beyond. We cover the news that shapes our global future. NDTV World.
Don't miss US election. Watch where every vote counts.
Wilmington in Delaware in the United States is the Maidan Square, very much in the heart of Kiev.
This is Gauri Divedi.
I am Alice D'Souza.
Vishnu Shom
Radhika Iyer for NDTV World. NDTV World.
for NDTV World.
एनडीटीवी वर्ल्ड समिट में उपस्थित सभी महानुभावों का मैं अभिनंदन करता हूं। इस समिट में आप लोग अनेक विषयों पर चर्चा करने जा रहे हैं। अलग अलग सेक्टर से जुड़े ग्लोबल लीडर्स भी अपनी बात रखेंगे। साथियों, हम बीते 4-5 साल के कालखंड को देखें तो ज्यादातर चर्चाओं में एक बात कॉमन रही है और वो बात है चिंता, भविष्य को लेकर चिंता। कोरोना के समय चिंता रही कि ग्लोबल पैंडेमिक से कैसे निपटें। कोविड बढ़ा तो दुनिया भर की इकोनॉमी को लेकर चिंता होने लगी। कोरोना ने महंगाई पर चिंता बढ़ाई, बेरोजगारी पर चिंता बढ़ाई, क्लाइमेट चेंज को लेकर चिंता तो थी ही, फिर जो युद्ध शुरू हुए उनकी वजह से चर्चाओं में चिंता और बढ़ गई। ग्लोबल सप्लाई चेन बिखरने की चिंता, निर्दोष लोगों की जान जाने की चिंता, ये तनाव, ये टेंशन, ये कॉन्फ्लिक्ट्स, ये सब कुछ ग्लोबल समिट्स और सेमिनार्स के विषय बन गए। और आज जब चर्चा का केंद्र चिंता ही है, तब भारत में किस तरह का चिंतन हो रहा है, कितना बड़ा कॉन्ट्राडिक्शन है। यहां चर्चा हो रही है द इंडियन सेंचुरी, भारत की शताब्दी। दुनिया में मची उथल पुथल के बीच भारत उम्मीद की एक किरण बना है। जब दुनिया चिंता में डूबी है, तब भारत आशा का संचार कर रहा है। और ऐसा नहीं कि ग्लोबल सिचुएशन से हमें फर्क नहीं पड़ता, हमें फर्क पड़ता है। चुनौतियां भारत के सामने भी है, लेकिन एक सेंस ऑफ पॉजिटिविटी यहां है जिसको हम सभी फील कर रहे हैं। और इसलिए द इंडियन सेंचुरी की बात हो रही है। साथियों, आज भारत हर सेक्टर में, हर क्षेत्र में जिस तेजी से काम कर रहा है वो अभूतपूर्व है। भारत की स्पीड, भारत की स्केल अनप्रेसिडेंटेड है। अभी हमारी सरकार के 3rd टर्म के करीब 125 डेज पूरे हुए हैं। मैं आपके साथ 125 डेज का अनुभव शेयर करूंगा। 125 डेज में गरीबों के लिए 3 करोड़ नए पक्के घरों को मंजूरी मिली है। 125 डेज में हमने 9 लाख करोड़ रुपए के इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर प्रोजेक्ट पर काम शुरू किया है। 125 डेज में हमने 15 नई वंदे भारत ट्रेनें चलाई हैं, 8 नए एयरपोर्ट पे के काम शुभारंभ हुए हैं। इन्हीं 125 डेज में हमने युवाओं के लिए 2 लाख करोड़ रुपए का पैकेज दिया है। हमने किसानों के बैंक खातों में 21,000 करोड़ रुपए सीधे ट्रांसफर किए हैं। हमने 70 साल से अधिक के बुजुर्गों के लिए 5 लाख रुपए तक के मुफ्त इलाज की व्यवस्था की है। आप भारत में हो रहे काम का दायरा देखिए। 125 डेज में 5 लाख घरों में रूफटॉप सोलर प्लांट लगाए गए हैं। एक पेड़ मां के नाम अभियान के तहत 90 करोड़ से अधिक पेड़ लगाए गए हैं। इतना ही नहीं, 125 डेज में हमने 12 नए इंडस्ट्रियल नोड्स को मंजूरी दी है। 125 डेज में हमारे सेंसेक्स और निफ्टी में 6 से 7% की ग्रोथ हुई है। हमारा फॉरेक्स $650 बिलियन से बढ़कर $700 बिलियन के पार कर चुका है। भारत की उपलब्धियों की लिस्ट बहुत लंबी है और मैं सिर्फ 125 डेज की ही बात कर रहा हूं। आपको ये बात भी नोट करनी होगी कि इन 125 डेज में दुनिया भारत में किन विषयों पर चर्चा करने आई। 125 डेज में भारत में कौन से ग्लोबल इवेंट्स हुए। भारत में टेलीकॉम और डिजिटल फ्यूचर पर चर्चा करने के लिए इंटरनेशनल असेंबली हुई। भारत में ग्लोबल फिनटेक फेस्टिवल हुआ। भारत में ग्लोबल सेमीकंडक्टर इकोसिस्टम पर चर्चा हुई। रिन्यूएबल एनर्जी और सिविल एविएशन के फ्यूचर की इंटरनेशनल कॉन्फ्रेंस भारत में हुई। फ्रेंड्स, ये सिर्फ इवेंट्स की लिस्ट नहीं है, ये भारत के साथ जुड़ी होप की भी लिस्ट है। इससे भारत की दिशा और दुनिया की आशा, ये दोनों समझ आती है। ये वो विषय हैं जो आने वाले समय में दुनिया का भविष्य तय करेंगे और इन विषयों की चर्चा के लिए आज दुनिया भारत आ रही है। साथियों, आज भारत में इतना कुछ हो रहा है। हमारे तीसरे टर्म में जो गति भारत ने पकड़ी है, उसे देखकर बहुत सी रेटिंग एजेंसीज ने भारत का ग्रोथ फोरकास्ट और बढ़ा दिया है। यहां जो भारत को सबसे ज्यादा प्यार करते हैं, ऐसे श्रीमान मार्क मोबियस जैसे पार्टी एक्सपर्ट यहां मौजूद है। वो जिस प्रकार भारत में होने वाले इन्वेस्टमेंट को लेकर उत्साहित है, उसका बहुत महत्व है। जब वो ग्लोबल फंड्स को कहते हैं कि अपना कम से कम 50% फंड भारत के शेयर मार्केट में इन्वेस्ट करे, तो इसका एक बड़ा मतलब है, बहुत बड़ा मैसेज है। साथियों, भारत आज एक विकासशील देश भी है और उभरती हुई शक्ति भी है। हम गरीबी की चुनौतियां भी समझते हैं और प्रगति का रास्ता बनाना भी जानते हैं। हमारी सरकार तेजी से नीतियां बना रही है, निर्णय ले रही है, नए रिफॉर्म्स कर रही है। हालांकि पब्लिक लाइफ में कई बार मुझे भांति भांति के लोग मिल जाते हैं। कुछ लोग कहते हैं, मोदी जी 3 बार लगातार सरकार तो बना ली, इतने सारे काम तो कर ही लिए, तो इतनी दौड़ धूप क्यों करते रहते हो, क्या जरूरत है? दुनिया की 5वीं बड़ी इकोनॉमी बन गए, इतने माइलस्टोन है, इतने पेंडिंग डिसीजन आपने ले लिए, इतने सारे रिफॉर्म्स कर लिए, अब क्या जरूरत है इतनी मेहनत की? ऐसा कहने वाले मुझे ढेर सारे लोग मिलते हैं, लेकिन जो सपने हमने देखे हैं, जो संकल्प लेकर के हम चले हैं, उसमें न चैन है न आराम है। पिछले 10 साल में 25 करोड़ लोग गरीबी से बाहर निकले हैं। क्या इतना ही काफी है? नहीं है क्या? पिछले 10 सालों में करीब 12 करोड़ शौचालय बने हैं, 16 करोड़ लोगों को गैस कनेक्शन मिले हैं। क्या इतना ही काफी नहीं है? पिछले 10 साल में भारत में 350 से ज्यादा मेडिकल कॉलेज बने हैं, 15 से ज्यादा एम्स बने हैं। क्या इतना ही काफी नहीं है? पिछले 10 साल में भारत में 1.5 लाख से ज्यादा नए स्टार्टअप बने हैं। 8 करोड़ युवाओं ने मुद्रा लोन लेकर पहली बार अपना कुछ काम शुरू किया है। और सवाल तब हो गया, क्या इतना कम नहीं है? मेरा जवाब है नहीं, इतना पूरा नहीं है। आज भारत दुनिया के सबसे युवा देशों में से एक है। इस युवा देश का पोटेंशियल हमें आसमान की ऊंचाई पर पहुंचा सकता है, और इसके लिए हमें अभी बहुत कुछ करना है, बहुत तेजी से करना है। साथियों, आज भारत की सोच और अप्रोच में जो बदलाव आया है, उसे आप भी जरूर नोटिस कर रहे होंगे। आमतौर पर परंपरा रही है और स्वाभाविक भी है, उसको गलत मैं नहीं मानता हूं। हर सरकार पिछली सरकारों के काम से तुलना करती है, और वो एक मानदंड होता है कि भाई पहले क्या था, अब क्या हुआ, पहले कितना था, अब कितना हुआ, और इससे संतोष भी मान लेती है कि चलो पिछली सरकार से हमने बेहतर किया। ज्यादा से ज्यादा पिछले 10-15 साल से तुलना करनी होती है कि तब और अब में क्या अंतर आया, इसको ही अपनी उपलब्धि मान लेती है। हम भी कभी इस रास्ते पर चलते थे, बहुत स्वाभाविक था, लेकिन अब हमें वो रास्ता भी रास नहीं आ रहा है। अब हम बीते हुए कल और आज की तुलना करके आराम फरमाने वाले लोग नहीं है। अब सफलता का मापदंड सिर्फ ये नहीं है कि हमने क्या पाया, अब हमारा आगे का लक्ष्य है हमें कहां पहुंचना है। हम उस ओर देख रहे हैं। अब कहां तक पहुंचे, कितना बाकी है, कब तक पहुंचेंगे, यानी एक नया अप्रोच लेकर के मैं पूरी सरकारी मशीनरी के साथ काम ले रहा हूं। अब भारत फॉरवर्ड लुकिंग सोच के साथ आगे बढ़ रहा है। 2047 तक विकसित भारत का संकल्प भी इसी सोच को दिखाता है। अब हम देखते हैं कि विकसित भारत का जो हमारा संकल्प है, उसकी सिद्धि के लिए हम यहां कहां तक पहुंचे हैं, हमें और कितना करना है, हमें किस स्पीड और स्केल का परिश्रम करना है। और ऐसा नहीं है कि ये सरकार ने तय कर दिया और टारगेट सेट हो गया। विकसित भारत के संकल्प से आज भारत के 140 करोड़ लोग जुड़ गए हैं। वो खुद इसे ड्राइव कर रहे हैं। ये जन भागीदारी का अभियान ही नहीं, बल्कि भारत के आत्मविश्वास का आंदोलन भी बन चुका है। आपको हैरानी होगी, जब सरकार ने विकसित भारत के विजन डॉक्यूमेंट पर काम करना शुरू किया तो लाखों लोगों ने अपने सुझाव भेजे। स्कूल, कॉलेज, यूनिवर्सिटीज में डिबेट्स हुए, डिस्कशंस हुए। सरकारी और सामाजिक संगठनों ने डिबेट्स किए। जनता से जो सुझाव मिले, उनके आधार पर भारत ने अगले 25 साल के लक्ष्य तय किए। विकसित भारत पर डिस्कशंस आज हमारी कॉन्सेंस का, हमारे चैतन्य का हिस्सा बन चुका है। मैं समझता हूं ये जनशक्ति से राष्ट्र शक्ति के निर्माण का सबसे बड़ा उदाहरण है। साथियों, आज भारत के पास एक और एडवांटेज है जो इस सदी को भारत की सदी बनाने के लिए बहुत महत्वपूर्ण है। आप सब जानते हैं कि ये एआई का दौर है। दुनिया का वर्तमान और भविष्य एआई से जुड़ा हुआ है, लेकिन भारत के पास डबल एआई पावर की एडवांटेज है। और आपके मन में सवाल होगा कि दुनिया पास एक ही एआई है, ये मोदी के पास डबल एआई कहां से आ गई? दुनिया की नजरों में एक ही एआई है, वो है आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस। लेकिन हमारे पास वो तो है ही, दूसरी एआई है एस्पिरेशनल इंडिया। जब एस्पिरेशनल इंडिया और आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस की ताकत मिलती है, तब विकास की गति भी तेज होनी स्वाभाविक है। साथियों, हमारे लिए एआई सिर्फ एक टेक्नोलॉजी नहीं है, बल्कि भारत के युवाओं के लिए अवसरों का एक नया द्वार है। इसी साल भारत ने इंडिया एआई मिशन शुरू किया है। हेल्थ केयर हो, एजुकेशन हो, स्टार्टअप्स हो, भारत हर सेक्टर में एआई का उपयोग बढ़ा रहा है। हम दुनिया को भी बेहतर एआई सॉल्यूशंस देने में जुटे हैं। क्वाड के स्तर पर भी भारत ने कई सारे इनिशिएटिव लिए हैं। भारत दूसरे एआई यानी एस्पिरेशनल इंडिया को लेकर भी उतना ही गंभीर है। भारत का मिडिल क्लास, भारत के सामान्य जन, उनकी ईज ऑफ लिविंग, उनकी क्वालिटी ऑफ लाइफ, भारत के छोटे उद्यमी, एमएसएमईज, भारत के युवा, भारत की महिलाएं, हम सबके एस्पिरेशंस को ध्यान में रखते हुए नीतियां बना रहे हैं, निर्णय ले रहे हैं। साथियों, एस्पिरेशनल इंडिया का एक उदाहरण भारत में कनेक्टिविटी को लेकर हो रहा शानदार काम है। हमने फास्ट फिजिकल कनेक्टिविटी और इंक्लूसिव कनेक्टिविटी पर बहुत फोकस किया है। ये डेवलपमेंट की एस्पिरेशन रखने वाले समाज के लिए बहुत जरूरी होता है। भारत के लिए तो ये और अधिक जरूरी है। इतना बड़ा देश, इतनी डाइवर्स ज्योग्राफी, भारत के पोटेंशियल को सही मायने में रियलाइज करने के लिए तेजी से कनेक्ट करना आवश्यक था। इसलिए हमने एयर ट्रैवल पर भी विशेष फोकस किया। मुझे याद है कि जब मैंने पहली बार कहा कि मैं हवाई चप्पल पहनने वालों को हवाई यात्रा कराना चाहता हूं, तो एक स्वाभाविक सा रिएक्शन था कि ये भारत में कैसे संभव है। लेकिन हम आगे बढ़े और उड़ान योजना शुरू हुई। आज उड़ान को 8 साल पूरे हो चुके हैं। उड़ान के तहत हमने 2 पिलर्स पर काम किया। एक टियर 2, टियर 3 शहरों में एयरपोर्ट्स का नया नेटवर्क बनाया और दूसरा एयर ट्रैवल को अफोर्डेबल बनाया, सबकी पहुंच में लाई। उड़ान योजना के तहत करीब 3 लाख फ्लाइट्स उड़ान भर चुकी हैं। इनमें 1.5 करोड़ आम नागरिक सफर कर चुके हैं। आज 600 से अधिक रूट्स उड़ान के तहत और इनमें से ज्यादातर छोटे शहरों को कनेक्ट करते हैं। 2014 में देश में 70 के आसपास एयरपोर्ट थे। आज देश में एयरपोर्ट की संख्या 150 को पार कर गई है। उड़ान योजना ने दिखाया है कि कैसे समाज की एस्पिरेशन विकास को गति देती है। साथियों, मैं आपको युवाओं से जुड़े कुछ उदाहरण देता हूं। हम भारत के युवाओं को एक ऐसी फोर्स बनाने में जुटे हैं जो पूरी दुनिया की ग्रोथ को ड्राइव कर सके, और इसलिए एजुकेशन, स्किल डेवलपमेंट, रिसर्च, एम्प्लॉयमेंट पर हमारा बहुत ज्यादा जोर है। पिछले 10 साल में इन क्षेत्रों में जो काम हमने किए हैं उसके नतीजे मिलने लगे हैं। अभी कुछ दिन पहले ही टाइम्स हायर एजुकेशन रैंकिंग आई है। भारत दुनिया का वो देश है जहां रिसर्च क्वालिटी के मामले में सबसे अधिक सुधार हुआ है। बीते 8-9 सालों में भारत की यूनिवर्सिटीज का पार्टिसिपेशन 30 से बढ़कर 100 से अधिक हो चुका है। क्यूएस वर्ल्ड यूनिवर्सिटी रैंकिंग में भी भारत की प्रेजेंस 10 साल में 300% से अधिक बढ़ी है। आज पेटेंट्स और ट्रेडमार्क्स की संख्या ऑल टाइम हाई पहुंच रही है। आज भारत दुनिया के लिए R&D का एक बड़ा हब बनते जा रहा है। दुनिया की करीब 2,500 कंपनियों के रिसर्च सेंटर भारत में है। भारत में स्टार्टअप इकोसिस्टम भी, उसका भी अभूतपूर्व विस्तार हो रहा है। साथियों, भारत में हो रहे हैं ये चौतरफा परिवर्तन दुनिया के लिए भी विश्वास का आधार बन रहे हैं। आज बहुत सारे विषयों में भारत ग्लोबल फ्यूचर को दिशा देने में लीड ले रहा है। दुनिया को लगता है कि भारत संकट के समय का साथी है। आप कोविड का वो दौर याद कीजिए। जरूरी दवाओं की, जरूरी वैक्सीन की हमारी जो कैपेसिटी थी, उससे हम भी करोड़ों डॉलर कमा सकते थे। उससे भारत का फायदा होता, लेकिन मानवता हार जाती। ये हमारे संस्कार नहीं है। हमने दुनिया के सैकड़ों देशों को संकट के समय दवाई पहुंचाई, जीवन रक्षक वैक्सीन पहुंचाई। मुझे संतोष है कि कठिन समय में भारत दुनिया के काम आ पाया। साथियों, भारत टेकन फॉर ग्रांटेड रिश्ते नहीं बनाता। हमारे रिश्तों की बुनियाद विश्वास और विश्वसनीयता के आधार पर है, और ये बात दुनिया भी समझ रही है। भारत एक ऐसा देश है जिसकी प्रगति से दुनिया में आनंद का भाव आता है। भारत सफल होता है, विश्व को अच्छा लगता है। अब चंद्रयान की घटना देख लीजिए, पूरे विश्व ने उसको एक उत्सव के रूप में मनाया। भारत आगे बढ़ता है तो जलन का, ईर्ष्या का भाव नहीं पैदा होता। हमारी प्रगति से दुनिया खुश होती है, क्योंकि भारत की प्रगति से पूरी दुनिया को फायदा होगा। हम सब जानते हैं कि कैसे अतीत में भारत ग्लोबल ग्रोथ को बढ़ाने वाली एक पॉजिटिव फोर्स था। कैसे भारत के आइडियाज, भारत के इनोवेशंस, भारत के प्रोडक्ट्स ने सदियों तक दुनिया पर अपना प्रभाव छोड़ा था। लेकिन समय बदला, भारत ने गुलामी का लंबा कालखंड देखा और हम पिछड़ते चले गए। इंडस्ट्रियल रिवॉल्यूशन के समय भी भारत गुलाम था। गुलामी के कारण हम औद्योगिक क्रांतियों का फायदा नहीं उठा पाए। वो समय भारत के हाथ से निकल गया। लेकिन अब आज ये भारत का समय है। ये इंडस्ट्री 4.0 का दौर है। भारत अब गुलाम नहीं है। हमें आजाद हुए 75 साल हो गए हैं और इसलिए अब हम कमर कसकर तैयार हैं। फ्रेंड्स, इंडस्ट्री 4.0 के लिए जो स्किल सेट चाहिए, जो इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर चाहिए, उस पर भारत बहुत तेजी से काम कर रहा है। बीते दशक के दौरान मुझे कितने ही ग्लोबल प्लेटफॉर्म से जुड़ने का अवसर मिला है। मैं दुनिया भर में G20 और G7 के सम्मेलनों का हिस्सा रहा हूं। 10 दिन पहले ही मैं आसियान समिट के लिए लाओस में था। आपको जानकर अच्छा लगेगा कि लगभग हर समिट में भारत के डिजिटल पब्लिक इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर की बहुत अधिक चर्चा होती है। आज पूरी दुनिया की नजर भारत के डीपीआई पर है। यहां हमारे साथी भारत के प्रशंसक श्रीमान पॉल रोमर बैठे हैं। मुझे पहले भी उनसे काफी विचार विस्तार से चर्चा करने का मौका मिला है। मैंने उनसे बहुत चर्चाएं की हैं। मैं अमेरिका में भी इनसे मिला। हमारी चर्चाओं के दौरान पॉल ने भारत के डिजिटल इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर की, आधार और डिजी लॉकर जैसे इनोवेशंस की बहुत तारीफ की है। बड़ी बड़ी समिट्स में इसी तरह लोगों को हैरानी होती है कि भारत ने इतना शानदार डीपीआई कैसे विकसित कर लिया। फ्रेंड्स, इंटरनेट के दौर में भारत के पास फर्स्ट मूवर का एडवांटेज नहीं था। जिन देशों के पास ये एडवांटेज था, वहां प्राइवेट प्लेटफॉर्म्स ने, प्राइवेट इनोवेशंस ने डिजिटल स्पेस को लीड किया। इससे निश्चित रूप से एक नई क्रांति दुनिया में आई, लेकिन उसके लाभ का दायरा सीमित ही था। जबकि भारत ने एक नया मॉडल दुनिया को दिया है। भारत ने टेक्नोलॉजी को डेमोक्रेटाइज करके डिजिटल पब्लिक इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर का नया रास्ता दुनिया को दिखाया है। आज भारत में सरकार एक प्लेटफॉर्म बनाती है और उस पर लाखों नए इनोवेशंस होते हैं। हमारी जनधन, आधार और मोबाइल की जैम कनेक्टिविटी, सर्विसेज की फास्टर और लीकेज फ्री डिलीवरी का एक बेहतरीन सिस्टम बन गया है। आप हमारा यूपीआई देखिए, इस पर फिनटेक का एक नया विस्तार भारत में हुआ है। यूपीआई के कारण आज हर रोज 500 मिलियन से ज्यादा के डिजिटल ट्रांजैक्शन हो रहे हैं और इसको ड्राइव करने वाले कोई कॉरपोरेट्स नहीं है, बल्कि हमारे छोटे दुकानदार हैं, स्ट्रीट वेंडर्स हैं। हमारा पीएम गतिशक्ति प्लेटफॉर्म एक और उदाहरण है। पीएम गतिशक्ति को हमने इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर प्रोजेक्ट्स के निर्माण में जो साइलोज आते थे, उसको दूर करने के लिए बनाया था। आज ये हमारे लॉजिस्टिक इकोसिस्टम को ट्रांसफॉर्म करने में मदद कर रहा है। ऐसे ही हमारा ओएनडीसी प्लेटफॉर्म है। ये ऑनलाइन रिटेल को ज्यादा डेमोक्रेटाइज, ज्यादा ट्रांसपेरेंट करने वाला इनोवेशन सिद्ध हो रहा है। भारत ने दिखाया है कि डिजिटल इनोवेशन और डेमोक्रेटिक वैल्यूज को एग्जिस्ट कर सकती है। भारत ने दिखाया है कि टेक्नोलॉजी, इंक्लूजन, ट्रांसपेरेंसी और एम्पावरमेंट का टूल है, कंट्रोल और डिवीजन का नहीं। साथियों, 21वीं सदी का ये समय ये मानव इतिहास का सबसे महत्वपूर्ण समय है। ऐसे में आज के युग की बड़ी जरूरतें हैं स्टेबिलिटी, सस्टेनेबिलिटी और सॉल्यूशंस। ये मानवता के बेहतर भविष्य के लिए सबसे जरूरी शर्तें हैं और भारत आज यही प्रयास कर रहा है। इसमें भारत की जनता का एक निष्ठ समर्थन है। 6 दशक में पहली बार देश के लोगों ने किसी सरकार को लगातार तीसरी बार अपना जनादेश दिया है। ये मैसेज स्टेबिलिटी का है। अभी हरियाणा में चुनाव हुए हैं। इन चुनावों में भी भारत की जनता ने स्टेबिलिटी के इस भाव को और मजबूती दी है। साथियों, क्लाइमेट चेंज का संकट आज पूरी मानवता का संकट बन गया है। इसमें भी भारत लीड लेने की कोशिश कर रहा है। ग्लोबल क्लाइमेट चेंज में हमारा कंट्रीब्यूशन न के बराबर है, फिर भी भारत में हमने ग्रीन ट्रांजिशन को अपनी ग्रोथ का फ्यूल बनाया है। आज सस्टेनेबिलिटी हमारी डेवलपमेंट प्लानिंग के कोर में है। आप हमारी पीएम सूर्यघर मुफ्त बिजली योजना को देख लें, खेतों में सोलर पंप लगाने की स्कीम को देख लें, हमारा ईवी रिवॉल्यूशन हो या इथेनॉल ब्लेंडिंग प्रोग्राम हो, बड़े बड़े विंड एनर्जी फार्म हो या एलईडी लाइट्स मूवमेंट हो, सोलर पावर्ड एयरपोर्ट्स हो या बायोगैस प्लांट्स पर फोकस हो। आप हमारा कोई भी प्रोग्राम, कोई भी स्कीम देख लीजिए, सभी में ग्रीन फ्यूचर को लेकर, ग्रीन जॉब्स को लेकर एक स्ट्रांग कमिटमेंट ही पाएंगे। साथियों, स्टेबिलिटी और सस्टेनेबिलिटी के साथ साथ भारत आज सॉल्यूशंस पर भी फोकस कर रहा है। बीते दशक में भारत ने ऐसे अनेक सॉल्यूशंस पर काम किया है जो ग्लोबल चैलेंजेस से निपटने के लिए जरूरी है। इंटरनेशनल सोलर अलायंस हो, कोalition फॉर डिजास्टर रेजिलिएंट इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर हो, इंडिया मिडिल ईस्ट इकोनॉमिक कॉरिडोर हो, ग्लोबल बायोफ्यूल अलायंस हो, योग हो, आयुर्वेद हो, मिशन लाइफ हो, मिशन मिलेट्स हो, भारत की तरफ से लिए गए सभी इनिशिएटिव्स दुनिया की चुनौतियों के समाधान देने वाले हैं। साथियों, मुझे खुशी है कि भारत का बढ़ता सामर्थ्य दुनिया की बेहतरी को सुनिश्चित कर सक रहा है। भारत जितना आगे बढ़ेगा, दुनिया को उतना ही फायदा होगा। हमारा प्रयास होगा भारत की सेंचुरी सिर्फ भारत की नहीं, बल्कि पूरी मानवता की जीत की सेंचुरी बने। एक ऐसी सदी जो सभी के टैलेंट से आगे बढ़े, एक ऐसी सदी जो सभी के इनोवेशन से समृद्ध हो, एक ऐसी सदी जहां गरीबी ना हो, एक ऐसी सदी जहां सबके पास आगे बढ़ने के अवसर हो, एक ऐसी सदी जिसमें भारत के प्रयासों से दुनिया में स्थिरता आए और विश्व शांति बढ़े। इसी भाव के साथ मुझे यहां निमंत्रित करने के लिए, अवसर देने के लिए मैं एनडीटीवी का फिर से आभार व्यक्त करता हूं और ये समिट सफल हो, इसके लिए मेरी तरफ से आपको ढेर सारी शुभकामनाएं हैं। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।
Just a brief introduction to Paul. He is a Nobel laureate, won the Prize for Economics in 2018. He was also the chief economist at the World Bank, and he's taught at least one prime minister. Rishi Sunak in Stanford, was it?
Yep.
Was he a good student?
I can't, professional obligations mean that I can't say.
So Stanford, so let's start with that. So you were, in your own words, once a cheerleader for Silicon Valley.
Yep.
It synced well with the theses that won you the Nobel Prize, that it was the power of ideas that could transform the world. I'm just trying to make it as simple as possible. But you told me now that you're disappointed with the way technology hasn't really worked to transform the world in the way you thought it would. Yeah. What went wrong?
Well, let me try and go back and situate myself in 1982 when I became a professor, when I got my first job in economics. This was a time of great pessimism. If any of you are as old as I am, you'll remember a report called Limits to Growth, which said that the global economy was doomed because we were going to run out of petroleum supplies in the 1990s. Now, I came on the scene and said, this is just absurd. If you look at history, we've had innovation on top of innovation on top of innovation, and the actual opportunities for us are very positive. And if you think about what's the real problem we face now, the people who were worried about not enough petroleum got the sign wrong. It's not that we have too little petroleum or fossil fuel, it's we have way too much of it. And if we burn it all, we'll cook the planet. And the way we would discover all of that new supply would be because people would innovate, they'd find ways to solve problems, they'd discover much more fossil fuel as they had. So when I saw Silicon Valley starting to seize the opportunities with digital electronics, I said, the sky is the limit here. We'll have all kinds of things we can do in the future that we couldn't do before. And that optimism about what we can do with the technology is still correct. I still believe that. And I believe it about a problem like climate change. We can decarbonize our electricity supply. We can find ways to still have growth, still have improving standards of living, and protect the planet. We'll discover ways to do that. But what's the disappointment? The question is, if we're given opportunities, what do we decide to do with those? And with the opportunities that we were given in the United States with digital technology, we have wasted, squandered a really phenomenal opportunity. And the way to see what we've lost is to compare the success in India with the way technology has been used in the United States. I think the initiative...
Let me just interrupt you here. Yeah. But if you ask the companies in Silicon Valley, they'll say, where is the lost opportunity? We've become the 4 or 5 most powerful companies in the world. The companies who have for the last 15 years dominated the US stock markets, never happened before. And show no signs of slowing.
Okay, well, let me give you my the conversation I have back and forth with them. When I said before that, look, historically, one of the signs of the dramatic improvements in standards of living is a steadily increasing life expectancy across countries, across time. And so then I talked to the Silicon Valley types and say, life expectancy has stopped increasing in the United States. It's actually falling. And then they say, oh, well, no, we don't want to use that measure anymore for progress. We want to use something else. And I'm saying, no, if that's the measure that we picked in the beginning, you got to stick with it. And by that measure, something's really gone wrong in the United States. People are not living as long as they did before. So how can it be that we've had a technological revolution and people aren't living as long? It's because that technology has not been used to improve the quality of life. And then you see what Aadhaar has done by not just making it easy for people in this room to make digital payments, but taking hundreds of millions of people who had no existence in the formal state. They had no document, no birth certificate, no driver's license, no official document of any kind. They didn't exist in the eyes of the modern state. Aadhaar made them real, gave them existence by giving them a number. And then all kinds of things have been built on top of that. So there's the direct benefit transfer schemes, access to financial accounts. But this was because this country decided we are going to use the technological opportunities here to benefit everyone. And I guarantee you life expectancy hasn't started falling in India.
It happened here because it came in from the top. You had Prime Minister Modi, when he came in 2014, adopt Aadhaar, which had been around even before he came, but he chose that, I mean, he stuck with it and used it for what, and we've seen the, what's happened now. So are you saying that government should be playing a larger role?
Yeah, absolutely.
Than just policy making and technology?
I'm saying that, and I think economists have done a huge disservice to the world by just repeating mindless assertions about the government is the problem and the market is the solution. That's just not true. So let's talk about something practical. How am I here? I got here because I could go to the airport, get on an airplane, fly here at minimal disruption and very safely. Why is it possible that I can do that? Well, there are all of these technologies of the jet engine, the GPS navigation system, the aeronautical insights about how to design the wings of an airplane. But that system wouldn't work if we didn't have a Federal Aviation Administration in the United States and in comparable agencies around the world who regulate the air travel industry and make it safe. So you don't need a government which is big in the sense of running the airlines. That is not a good idea. But you do need a government which is big in the sense, or strong, strong. We want a strong government that can say, you're going to lose your ability to fly airplanes if you don't follow the safety regulations. Or you're going to lose your ability to sell that airplane unless you fix the safety defect. You need a government strong enough to say that to generate the benefits that we get from air travel. And that's what's missing in the use of technology in the United States. But that was what was present here in India. People around the government, and even people from the private sector, like Nandan Nilekani, came in and said, we're going to build a system that benefits everyone. And we're going to follow certain principles. And it was really a kind of a masterpiece of design in the sense of, just like the GPS system, Aadhaar solved only one problem. Present a person to me, and I'll tell you what that person's number is. That's all it did. Just like GPS, all it does is tell you what are your coordinates on the surface of the Earth. But with that foundation, you can then build all of these fantastic services that you now enjoy. So the government in India was not afraid to set up the Aadhaar system, was not afraid to indicate how it would be used in something like UPI and direct benefits. And the government of India was happy to build apps. In my country, people are like terrified of letting the government do something like build an app, but it's a shame.
Yeah, so we got Aadhaar, we got DigiYatra, but companies would argue that, so you're talking about technology needing more regulation.
Yep.
But you could argue that rules hold back technology. And if you have too much regulation, you won't see technology develop the way it can or has.
Sure. So you can have too much of anything. We had a form of regulation for prices on airline seats at one time in the United States. Economists pointed out that was unnecessary, so we got rid of price regulation. You can let the market determine the price for an airline seat. But what we didn't do was deregulate the safety standards in manufacturing airplanes or the safety regulations in actually running an airline. Until, to be honest, until the Trump administration, where we actually did say to Boeing, basically, it's fine, we won't regulate safety anymore, and Boeing started creating airplanes that crashed and killed people. And this turned out to be bad for the shareholders of Boeing, it's bad for the workers of Boeing, it's bad for the citizens of the world. So that was a case where this kind of mindset of, oh, deregulation is bad, let's get more growth by turning off deregulation, was really harmful to everybody.
So let's come back to how India has, the success of Aadhaar and Digi Yatra in India. So now how can India drive that advantage further in developing or leveraging that to take a lead in emerging technologies? Difficult for us, companies sitting in the room, to take on the Googles and the Facebooks and the large tech companies in the US. But how do we leverage our strength to build our own market?
Well, I think the fundamental difference was that in the United States, people saw the opportunity to create a platform and then to use the monopoly power that was conveyed by a platform to capture private wealth. What people in India saw is that they could build a platform of Aadhaar that was controlled by the government and could be used for the benefit of the people, not to generate wealth for just a small subset of people. So the platforms have been very powerful, but we need to think, what are we doing with them and what do we want to achieve?
So do you then view India as an emerging technological, I won't use the word superpower, but can it become one?
Well, I think, frankly, we're in a very bad situation in the United States because the mantra of the Republican Party is government can't do anything right, put us in charge and we'll prove it. And so we've had governments that don't do things. We've had governments that stop doing things like regulating Boeing. And that's led to this perception that the government can't accomplish anything. We've had other trends as well. The judiciary increasingly tries to micromanage everything the government does. And so people feel like the government can't get anything done. That makes them want to basically tear it all down, to get rid of the government. When in fact, what they need to do is build a government which is strong enough to get something done. The benefit in India that you enjoy right now is that people can see in their daily lives the benefits that they have been able to enjoy because of government innovation in terms of how benefits are handed out, how people get access to financial accounts, how they do transactions. People see that the government has delivered. That gives the government a level of legitimacy which it can then use to try and go do more. And I want to emphasize that this really depends on an executive branch of government that can make things happen. If you read the history of Aadhaar, you remember there were like Supreme Court cases and justices and people saying, oh, all kinds of terrible things will happen because of Aadhaar and they will never succeed. But you had an executive branch which pushed this idea forward and didn't let the judges hamstring them, and they achieved this remarkable success. So in the West, we're too hamstrung by the judiciary. We have this longing for an executive that could get something done, but unfortunately, the people who are promoting themselves as the ones who can get something done probably can't.
Okay. So here the executive was willing to push technology, and it happened, and we've seen the result.
And not just push it, but push it in a direction that would benefit everyone.
But so technology and urbanization, those are your two pet themes, and you said that urbanization is the fundamental engine of economic growth. That's something is very, very close to you, and that's something when Prime Minister Modi took over in 2014, he spoke about 100 smart cities. So clearly, you were in sync on that. You came and met him in Gujarat when you were Gujarat Chief Minister to talk about urbanization.
No, I came.
It hasn't taken off the way we would have liked.
So, to be honest, I predicted privately that when Prime Minister Modi moved to the national government, he would be disappointed by his inability to continue the kind of successes he had achieved in Gujarat. in the national government, you're too far away from the facts on the ground. What's impressive to me is the other achievements that he has been able to push forward, like in the digital space. But the big question for India right now is how do you get the momentum back on urbanization?
How do we do that?
And successful urbanization was a very important key to the success in China. India needs to take advantage of the potential there. The challenge with urbanization is land assembly. If you can assemble a large enough parcel of land, you can take that land, which is worth very little, and turn it into land which is phenomenally valuable by creating a modern city there. So by land, I mean something like 1,000 square kilometers, say 30 by 30 kilometers. Not huge by the standards of a nation the size of India, but in a country with a whole history of private ownership rights of land, it's extremely difficult to assemble a parcel of that size and say, okay, we're going to build a city here. I think India needs to get clever about figuring out how to do that.
Before we get to the problem of, can you just explain to us why you think, or why do you call urbanization as the prime engine of growth, of development?
Yeah. First, if you just measure the location where GDP gets produced in all over the world, it's very much concentrated in urban centers. There are a few things like land, like agriculture and minerals that require the land resources of land, but all of the other value is produced in cities. So absent impediments, all of that activity will move into cities. And this is a reflection of the thing I first studied, which is the power of ideas. When you can share ideas and work with the ideas of others in a connected urban environment, you can produce much more value than if you're off on your own. So the future will be almost entirely urban. 90+% of the population will be in urban centers, but you need to expand the total amount of floor space in urban areas to accommodate all those people. And every country in the world right now is having trouble increasing the supply of urban floor space.
So how do you increase that? I mean, will the market ultimately solve that, or would you need regulation? Do you need policy?
What we've seen is that the market cannot increase the supply, and so what's happened is as the demand for urban floor space goes up, the price goes up, but the supply doesn't respond. And the reason the supply doesn't respond is because there are many levels of government now which stand in the way of someone who wants to build a new building, increase the height of the building on a particular plot of land, convert some land from agricultural into buildings. So it's the government, frankly, which is in the way of the increase in the supply of urban floor space that everybody in the world needs.
But here the government headed by a person who's convinced that urbanization is the way to go. And yet, he finds it difficult to push it.
Yep. Well,
it just tells you how difficult the... So what would you advise him to do?
Yeah, the dilemma here is that the big gains come from letting millions of cooperate cooperate with each other to produce value in a city. But getting millions of people organized to go in a particular direction is very challenging. The thing that I think India should be doing is first trying to make it possible to increase the breadth of urban development in existing cities, increase the height of the buildings in the existing built area, but those two measures enough will not keep up with the demand. So you need to be thinking about entirely new cities that you could build. Now, the economics of this is really interesting. You take 1,000 square kilometers, like let's say the land of Singapore, that was worth essentially nothing when Malaysia gave it away. Lee Kuan Yew built a successful city in Singapore that meant that land was then worth $1 trillion US after a few decades.
Just the land?
Just the land, yeah. So there's buildings you had to build and there's people doing work, but just the land goes from being worth nothing to $1 trillion. With $1 trillion of gain, you can finance a lot of investments to make the city succeed. And Singapore became the first non-oil sovereign wealth fund, the holder of the first non-oil sovereign wealth fund, because it took the gains from the land that the government owned and invested them on behalf of the citizens. So what India needs to do is to figure out how to mobilize the people who own all the pieces of land right now that can't agree on anything, assemble a parcel that's on the scale of, say, 1,000 square kilometers, which could host about 10 million people in a new city, and then offer them, you'll each get a proportional share of the $1 trillion in gain that we can build from just letting a city emerge here, but you all have to stop retaining a veto right over exactly what happens in your parcel. We have to be able to lay out, streets, and we got to put in sewers and provide for the public space. It's a very straightforward process once you assemble the land. Now, I don't think when Lee Kuan Yew took over Singapore, he used eminent domain to just take the land of the whole island. The prime minister can't do that, but what he could do is run a contest between the various states of India and say, we, the federal government, will reward the first state that finds a way to get a consensus and assemble a parcel of 1,000 square kilometers and devote it to new urban development. If you started that as a contest, instead of having states resisting an initiative like this, you'd get them running to be the ones that win and become the new Hong Kong, the new Singapore, the new Shenzhen in some part of India. So the economics of this are not hard, but the politics are challenging, and this is where leadership could really make a difference.
Moving on, you're credited with the quote that a crisis is a terrible thing to waste, a terrible,
Right.
horrible thing to waste.
Right.
What, to your mind, is the biggest crisis facing us today? And what's the opportunity?
Yep.
Is it climate change? Is it?
So climate change, to be sure. We could use climate change once again to commit to this notion that if we just create incentives for people to solve a problem, we can solve it, and we can solve it really at no great cost in terms of the quality of life. We need to have a mechanism if we want to, for example, get people to innovate in a way which decarbonizes the energy supply. You got to create a way to steer innovation in that direction instead of the direction it's been going, which is discovering more and more fossil fuel. We don't need any more of that, but we do need more innovations that are low carbon. We could commit to innovation will solve this problem. Let's just create the incentives for innovation and go forward with it. And we could get out of this doomsday kind of scenario thinking that where things are hopeless and that there's nothing we can do. It's all in our hands. We can solve that problem. So the opportunity there that we shouldn't waste is to say, we can fix this if we just set our minds to it. Now, let me say one other crisis that I think is really kind of looming where India, I think, could be particularly important. China and Russia both want to go back to a world of empires where the sovereign state, if you were listening to David Cameron, he was speaking as if it was obvious that everybody agreed that there's a notion of a independent states with sovereign borders. That's not the way that people who want to go back to empire think of things. They think of empires as having the ability to meddle and influence their whole sphere of influence, and the national border is not important. So there's a vision of return to empire, which was a very durable form of human organization for centuries, that both China and Russia are pushing. And there's a Western notion of what they call the Westphalian state from the Treaty of Westphalia, which says, no, there are states with borders, and it's absolutely taboo for one state to try and invade and interfere with another. India needs to decide, does it want to be on the side of empire, or does it want to be on the side of the Westphalian state? And I think India might be able to stand up and say, we remember what it was like being part of an empire, and we didn't like it. So we want to stand up for the importance of the sovereign state as the organizing principle going forward in the world. If India takes that stand, it could really decisively tip the balance, which might otherwise go in the direction of, okay, well, China will have its imperial sphere and Russia will have its, and they'll just meddle and influence in surrounding countries, and we'll just go back to that kind of world.
You really think so?
I do.
Yeah. So one final question.
Well, frankly, I mean, the United States had been a strong supporter of the Westphalian states, but the United States may not be as decisive in decades to come. So the world needs
You
to...
have been fairly pessimistic about the position of the United States.
Yeah.
What's led to that? And
Well, as I told you, I just look at the facts, and the facts are that we're trying to decide right now whether the most powerful nation on earth should be led by a former federal prosecutor or a habitual criminal. And for some reason, that seems to be a hard choice for some people. That makes me very worried about the future of my country.
okay. So we have a large market audience here. So what does that mean for the dollar?
Excuse me, what?
What does that mean for the dollar?
Oh.
You were chief economist of the World Bank. You are an economist.
Oh, I'll tell you, when I was at the World Bank, I didn't ever try to weigh in on forecasts about the dollar or forecasts about GDP, but I did try to weigh in on one thing. If you look on Wikipedia at the article about ADHAR, within the first paragraph, there's a quote from me as the chief economist saying, ADHAR is the most important technological system in the world right now. And so that's the kind of thing where I feel like I can make a better judgment. And I saw right from the beginning how powerful ADHAR was going to be. What happens to the dollar? What happens to the stock market? I'm not the right person to ask about that.
So, forecast for us then the US election. And I'll tell you why you're qualified. You are an intelligent man, very intelligent. You come from a political family. Your father was governor of Colorado.
Yep.
Your brother was state senator.
Yep.
So you obviously have your finger on that pulse. So who's winning?
I think it's very hard to tell right now who will win. It seems to be very close. And the real question is, why is it so hard? And I think to kind of give some credit for this, think about the fact that people are dying younger in the United States. There's some of this is what they call these the diseases of despair, alcoholism, drug addiction. But this is a sign of really profound distress in large parts of the country. And we shouldn't minimize that. And when people are so discouraged, so depressed, that they're drinking themselves to death and they've given up hope, it's not a surprise that they're willing to just lash out or do something a little bit irrational. I think people like me, economists, need to take responsibility for the fact that we let this situation deteriorate to the point where those people are so, they don't see any improvement in their lives. They don't see any future. They don't see the possibility of progress. We should have insisted more firmly that growth had to generate benefits that were shared by everyone. We should have developed programs like ADHAR that did spread the benefits so widely. And we failed to do so, and now we're paying the price.
Okay, on that note, Professor Romo, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, gentlemen, for that absolutely fascinating conversation. But moving on now, well, along with many other drivers, the India century will be defined by India Inc. as it takes on the world. And who better, Parmeshwar, to articulate this than India's foremost global businessman?
Well, for our next session, India Ascends, the India Global Business, I would now like to invite on stage Shri Sunil Bharti Mittal and NDTV's Tamanna Inamdar.
So Sunil Bharti Mittal has, of course, been the pioneer of bringing the telecom age to India. And I think in your latest move will also save Indians from the biggest pestilence we are facing currently, which is spam calls. So let me start with thanking you for that, Mr. Mittal.
Well, thank you. It's a great pleasure for me to be here at the NDTV World Summit. Let's start with this topic. I think most of us have been harassed, if I may use that word, by spam calls, by messages, and it's becoming an increasing nuisance. And in the last year or so, I would say this has really picked up menacing proportions. And to that extent, some solution was much required. And we at Airtel have been working on this for a period of time. And it's hard to, balance the issue of privacy of customers, what they want to receive and what they would like to be blocked. So it's not an easy area to work on. And that's why you needed a lot of machine learning, a lot of AI at work to ensure that we are looking at patterns rather than individuals. And that's how we were able to solve the problem. And it's a completely machine-based, AI-based spam protection setup now we have. Every time you receive a call, first of all, billions of messages and calls are being stopped, which you don't even get to see, which we are 100% certain are coming from wrong places with wrong intentions. But occasionally also still, because we are learning, the machines are learning all the time, there are some suspicion or suspected calls or spam messages which come through, and they are labeled for the customer's benefit, a spam call or a spam message.
Yeah.
So that is really, to my mind, protecting our customers, and we have received tremendous response, positive response from our large customer base.
Okay, of course, that is just one of the many things Mr. Sunil Bharti Mittal has done. Recipient of India's highest civilian order, a giant in Indian industry. And today, thank you so much, Mr. Mittal, for joining us on the NDTV World Summit. I want to start by asking you about how you look at Indian business and their role globally. For years, India has been seen as the best marketplace, a huge population, a thriving middle class, a country in which every global company wants to come and sell their product and service. But what about Indian businesses going global? Do you think the time of the Indian MNC has now come?
Yeah, indeed. I mean, I grew up in the times of severe shortages and restrictions of importing stuff. Very few aspirational consumer products were being manufactured in India. Everything was being looked from outside. If you had some sources of affluence, you always wanted, products which were coming from overseas. I think we have seen the transformation of this country, and increasingly so in the last decade or so under our Prime Minister's leadership. India has truly become now a place where you produce locally, you consume locally, and importantly, now you also export globally. It is only natural that given the scope and scale that India is offering, some companies will start to emerge as true global companies or multinational companies. Tatas have always been at the forefront. They took some serious early bets in the European market and a bit in Africa and South Africa mainly. In 2010, we made an audacious move to go into 15 countries in Africa. We added one more later on. We divested two. We are still in 14 sub-Saharan countries. It's perhaps one of the only branded product out of India. So you'll see Airtel in 14 countries in sub-Saharan Africa. You will see it in Sri Lanka. You will see it in Bangladesh. So we are in many countries outside India. But importantly, our latest move of taking significant stake in two European companies, Eutelsat OneWeb, which is a satellite company. We are the largest shareholder of that company, just under 25%, with the French government and the British government being the other two shareholders. And we have recently made a move on acquiring a significant stake in British Telecom, in which we have acquired 10% and waiting for the permissions to go up to 25%, which we are hopeful should happen pretty soon. So you can see the emergence of Indian companies now on global stage. And the good thing is, India's money is welcome. Unlike, I would say, our neighboring country, China's investments, which are being blocked actually, and the money which is coming from the Middle East is being put through a much stronger filter because they are sovereign-backed monies. Western world prefers private sector investment, and India can offer that from here. You are seeing GMR building airports outside. You are seeing Adani now going into Kenya. You are seeing Godrej going overseas, Bajaj going outside, Hero Motors going outside. You are starting to see the emergence of global companies slowly but surely out of India now.
Yeah, so the age of the Indian MNC is soon to come. Let me come back to your foray into Africa in 2010. What was the thought behind that, and why did you look at the African continent?
Well, Africa has been almost forever a continent of hope. And you keep on, hoping that it'll get better, and you get a setback, you get better. I mean, just to give you a sense, we acquired this company in 2010 when the revenues were about $5 billion. Today, after 14 years, it's still $5 billion in dollar terms.
Oh.
But had the currencies not gone down, it would have been about $17 billion. So our assessment that there is tremendous amount of growth in Africa held out to be true. So in local currency terms, we have been growing at a rapid pace. Even now, the company is growing at over 20% year on year, which is rare anywhere in the world. Just to give you a context, Europe or UK, the companies are growing at 0.5% to maximum 1.5%. And that's why the valuations in Europe are low. In Africa, they are 20%, and India is 10-12%. But the currency depreciations have been pretty stark. So these are the geopolitical risks that Indian companies, when they go out, will look at. But we knew if we wanted our next 100 million customers, we had to go somewhere outside to a place like Africa. Today, we have nearly 160 million customers in these 14 countries. And the way population and the young people are adopting technologies, I think we will be at 250 million customers in not too distant future. And hopefully, these currencies will also start to stabilize.
Yeah. In terms of the Indian context, India has been a service-oriented economy. We are now moving to becoming a manufacturing hub. Do you think that's the game changer that India Inc. also needs to double down behind? Of course, strong policy push, but India Inc. is also coming in on that platform?
Yeah, I think manufacturing has been a focus for every country. The smallest to the largest countries have all focused on manufacturing because the political leadership recognizes that to create jobs, you really need manufacturing. And we have all seen China done it remarkably well for its large population. Now, given the context that India will have in not too distant future, we're talking about 2030, India will have 1 billion people in the working age, 1 billion people, which means great opportunities, tremendous amount of consumption, equally tremendous amount of savings. But these people need to get jobs. Now, digital will provide jobs and opportunities. NASSCOM's assessment is that we'll need 1 million people in the digital world in the next 5 years, continuously on a year-by-year basis. But that's just 5 million people. There are some other sectors, service industry, tourism, our new e-commerce type of activities, which will also generate a lot of jobs. But in the end, for any nation to really become a true economic power, you need manufacturing. And I'm so glad that finally India is getting its manufacturing piece right. The PLI, productivity linked incentive, is becoming a huge boost for the manufacturing sector. And the trusted products and services and networks, where India is saying anything that goes into the networks, the digital networks, must be trusted. And that is forcing a lot of companies to come and manufacture here in this country. Suddenly you're seeing from a net importer of mobile phones, India has started to now export phones. And as our Prime Minister mentioned just last week, that India will eventually start to produce mobile phones in India, not just assembling them, but right from the semiconductor stage to the glass shells, to the entire structure of the phones and its circuitry being made in India. So you will, in the next few years, have a truly fully India-made mobile phones. And just an example of how manufacturing is taking place. So electronics, hardware manufacturing, software, in any case, India has been very strong.
You know, you talked about the employment part of it. The private capex part of it also becomes very important, and that's one standard discussion which takes place every year. That is private capex coming in to the extent it does. If I were to ask you, Mr. Mittal, where do you think the animal spirits are ranking right now as far as India Inc. is concerned? With the kind of backing of policy you're seeing, what would you say?
Well, I think all the industrial players, all the corporates, I would say include the medium and small industries as well, know one thing for sure, that the consumption in this country for all the products that they're going to manufacture is only going to rise. With 1 billion people in the workforce, dependency going down, which means there are lots of more demand for services and products, you need scale. And for that, you need to invest. So on one hand, the government of India is encouraging massive investments in infrastructure, fully recognizing that every dollar that goes into infrastructure will yield $2.5, $3 in economic activity. And the private sector, led by, I would say, major industrial companies, My own company spends between 30 and 35,000 crores a year on digital infrastructure creation, whether it's laying up of fiber, putting up more towers, more radios, more satellite nodes, more submarine cables. And similarly, you're saying the cement, steel, automobiles, new industries like green hydrogen. So people are investing. I mean, large industrial houses are investing. Sometimes I think there's a kind of a feeling that the Indian incorporation or Indian industry is not spending enough to match the government's ambitions or aspirations. Occasionally, sometimes you have overcapacity created and then the prices fall. Right now, you're seeing in the steel industry, some dumping is happening from our neighboring countries. So there's a bit of a stress there. But these are cycles which are, to my mind, short in a country like India, which has massive consumption. So I remain very hopeful that you will have very strong supply side investments coming through.
So what is the next big investment leg, Mr. Mittal? Is it satellite, enabled digital push for India? Is that the next big dream for you, what you are seeing?
Well, I have been into satellite for the last now about 4.5 years. I've been studying it. I personally feel that is truly one of the now magic bullets to cover the dark areas. We still have about 2 billion people in the world who are not connected to internet. Even in the most advanced countries like US, you have something called RDOF, which was the Rural Development Opportunity Fund created by FCC of $16 billion. I was quite surprised that there are large parts of US which still do not have high-speed broadband. And you can't reach them. It's just physically very difficult. So coming back to our country, the large swaths of Rajasthan desert, it's very hard to cover it by radio telephony. Himalayas, forests, the coastline, aviation, there are areas where mobile networks will not go, leave alone fiber. For those areas, you need satellite communications. And that, to my mind, offers now a great source of new opportunities for us mobile operators or telecom operators to put that in a mix and start to cover areas which have still left behind. India provides a very high quality signal to 95% of its population. There are 5% of people who don't get internet in the country, and they live in 25% of the area of the country. So it's a very large area with a very small population. The only way to cover that is satellite.
Okay, so right now you have roti, kapda, makan, and Wi-Fi have become the needs of the people. You're saying by bringing satellite spectrum into play, you cover this for all of India. Is that the difference that we will see?
Yeah, I think this will, right now there is a ground station in Gujarat, in Mehsana, and in Pondicherry. There are 2 ground stations ready to start services. The day government gives us the permission, there will not be a single square inch of this country which will not have a radio coverage. So you just need to raise your hand and be connected.
So, I have to ask this question, and it's not about any one company or any one service, but why is it so difficult to have a clear telephone conversation or a mobile phone conversation without being interrupted? While we're talking about 5G, we're talking about satellite, many customers constantly complain about everyone. I'm not just pointing out one, that it's so difficult to make a call. How does that change?
Well, honestly, I've not heard this in a long time. There was a period of time that their spectrum was less. Spectrum is now in plentiful. Yes, there are still some issues about siting of towers, especially, I would say Lutyens Delhi is one classic case where putting up towers is a real problem. For companies that spend tens of billions of dollars on spectrum and spends every year $4 to $5 billion, putting up 2,000 sites in Delhi is a piece of cake. You can do it in 20 days. The problem is siting of towers. Please don't put up on my home or near my place or in my building, but go into somebody else's place. I mean, that's a real problem. Yeah. Thankfully, the new Telecom Act provides for access to buildings or right of way to put fiber in the hands of the mobile operators. Is it working on the ground? Not fully. NDMC, MCD, all have to be sensitized. State governments have to be sensitized. It's just putting in more infrastructure. But the good news is we have some of our friends here from the US. I was just told by our guest who just spoke before me that he pays $100 a month. And I can tell you the US services are significantly poorer than India. And you spend $2.50 a month here and you get 60 gigabytes a month. You can't use 60 gigabytes a month. There are, I have to say, we are significantly superior than Europe, UK, US, of course better than African continent. We are behind Japan, Singapore, Dubai. These are two city-states, and maybe certainly South Korea. These are, to my mind, are role models where the quality of mobile networks is really superior. Advantage, and I must explain this, siting is not a problem because every building is connected with a fiber. All you need to do is go and put up a street furniture, as we call it, a small little antenna in a building, connected to the fiber, and you backhaul it to the radio network. That will take some time here. We just need, as we just heard, urban infrastructure should be a plug and play. I should be able to go and put up on any street lamp a small antenna, wherever you have a call problem of a call drop or a voice quality, plug it there, put up a small antenna, it's done. It'll take some time. But we are, honestly, I'm telling you, I'm the biggest, or rather the chief complaint officer of my company. There's a person sitting in my car. Whenever the call is not going through well, he makes a note. By the evening, we try to resolve it. There's not a single dinner I go to where somebody tells me, my phone is not working in my third basement. Third basement. I'm saying, you pay me $2.50, okay, I'll still attempt to do it. I mostly get to the second basement, I can tell you, but sometimes I don't get to the third basement.
Sir, just talking about the $2.50, tariff hikes were taken, but do we need more?
After that, we are at $2.50 after the tariff hike. So you can imagine what we have been suffering for a long time. Ideally, $5, not 50 or 100. But that is where we need to get to buy more spectrum, put more investment in infrastructure. I am telling you, we heard our Honorable Prime Minister this morning, this country's future is resting on digital infrastructure.
Yes.
The wonderful DPI that the Prime Minister spoke about today is truly a gift to every citizen of this nation, and hopefully that can be lifted and shifted to Africa and other developing countries. UPI, direct benefit transfers, Aadhaar-based identification, all this is creating wonderful magic. Just imagine these phones in the hands of villagers who are connected to the world now on high-speed data, paying a very small amount of money. We really need to create a first-rate infrastructure here, continue to invest in it, and if that means crowdsourced another $0.50 or $1 from each customer in the country, trust me, it's worth it because we will build the same networks as you see in Japan and Singapore right here in this country.
How does that happen then? How do you think $2.50 will go to $5? Is the appetite there? I think the last tariff hike was well taken. Do you see more coming anytime soon?
So at some point in time, my view is yes, because in the end, current ARPUs are lower than 2016. Add to that all the inflation of electricity, fuel prices, compensation salaries, just basically cost of running any business. We have not even caught up with the inflation. I mean, if you go to UK, what has Ofcom done? There's a price set, and after that they're saying you can keep on increasing every year with the inflation. That's what all the companies do. We have been going back in our tariffs. So coming back a little bit at some point in time will be valid, very valid.
I want to switch to a bigger vision, and we spoke in detail about telecom sector and of course what Bharti Airtel is doing, the groundbreaking moves. I come back to congratulating you on the use of AI to stop spam. But I want to come to you on the kind of impact policy push has for industry. And I ask you from the point of view of something that you have experienced yourself, and you've spoken about this. When in the 80s, suddenly overnight, a business you were in no longer existed because of a change in policy. Do you think India Inc. today feels more secure that such changes will not happen? Because the last thing business wants is instability.
Yeah, I think policy predictability is required for any investor, both foreign and domestic. In the last 10 years, we have seen only more solidifying of policy making, stability of policy making, and in fact, in our industry, which had plethora of regulations, have all been simplified. Today, doing telecom business is much, much easier from the regulatory standpoint as it was some years back. In fact, in 2020, when the industry almost came on its knees, 8 large operators shut down their shop in India, the government of India quickly moved and ushered in a major reform in the telecom industry, where they removed multiplicity of permissions. For every tower, you had to have 40 permissions at that time, all gone. Licensing for import of equipment, all gone. Bank guarantees, 80% of them gone. And there were a lot of simplification done. So I would say the investors, both domestic and international, can take a lot of comfort that this government genuinely means ease of doing business. And for that, one of the pillars is policy predictability, which we are seeing strengthening year by year.
You talked about a time when there were 8 telecom players. We're down to 3 now. I'm very tempted to ask you, Mr. Mittal, do we need 3?
Yeah, I have always maintained that. For a large country like India, 3 private sector plus 1 public sector is the right structure of the industry in the marketplace, and I hope it stays that way.
Yeah. I want to come to you on the bit about AI, and we touched about it briefly in the context of one scheme. But AI is a very controversial sort of a movement. There are those that believe it can do more harm than good, and those who believe in its power. I was wondering how you see use cases in India, and how do you use them in your own business?
Well, any technology, when it's brought in, has its pluses and minuses. AI is now a reality. It's been going on for a long period of time. Without us knowing, AI was at work behind the scene on our mobile phones, looking at our patterns of spending, our movements, our travel, our sites that we visit. And it was trying to do a lot of stuff at the background without us knowing. Now, what you see is AI right in front and center of yourself. More importantly, the advent of generative AI and the AGI is coming through. Now, the world going forward, which I would say we will see the early signs of it, and our children will see a lot more of that. They live in that universe. AI is going to be one of the most important drivers of the world's economies, of the world's politics, geopolitics, stresses amongst nations in the world. AI is going to be at the forefront. AI-led efficiencies that are being brought into the companies will have its challenges for certain workforce, but new job opportunities will be created. Will there be misuse of AI? Certainly there will be. We will have to be more vigilant. Just on this, as we do it for cybersecurity, AI will pose new challenges. AI will need to be looked through the lens of the regulators as well from time to time. Nation states will have to build guardrails. I can give you one personal example. Just not too long ago, one of my senior finance persons in Dubai, which handles our Africa headquarters, got a call in my voice, my tone, directing for a money transfer, a fairly large amount of money. And he was sensible. He immediately realized that I wouldn't call anybody in my company to make that kind of a deal. But when I heard that, voice recording, I was quite stunned. It was perfectly articulated as I would speak, and anybody who would have not been vigilant may have done something about it.
That's incredible.
And so you will have now...
Did you track down where it came from? Was it possible to do that?
I mean, we put our complaints and all to the police and all that, but I'm sure this is now a daily routine. One will have to be vigilant. Tomorrow you will see not just a voice, you will probably see your digital signatures, you'll see your face on a Zoom call. All these things will have to be protected. I mean, we'll have to protect our societies from the evils of AI. And yet, we have to use the goodness of AI, because those companies, nations that will not adopt AI will be left behind. So this is a conundrum for every time you get a new technology into place. There are pluses and minuses. I remain very optimistic about the benefit of AI that the human race will achieve and be able to do jobs which are otherwise very difficult to perform.
What is the use case you have found for AI in your businesses, and have you found it replacing human jobs in any of the functions? For example, customer complaint, etc.?
Yeah, I would say routine, mundane, repetitive jobs are certainly going to be under straight threat. And we are already seeing in our company, we are making huge efficiencies through the adoption of AI, which means reduction of people. But equally, new jobs are coming through.
To what extent, if I may ask, reduction of people?
It depends. I mean, in the call center, as you said, there's going to be a big change. In our workforce management, there's going to be a big change. I mean, just go back in time. I mean, just 10 years back, every time a customer had to be onboarded onto a mobile phone, there was a physical form to be filled up. There were runners on scooters and mobiles who would take those forms to a different center. From there, they would fax into another place. I mean, in 10 years' time, I mean, that it seems like a joke today, you see. Similarly, you'll go 10 years forward, some of these repetitive jobs will disappear. But have we suffered on account of the earlier adoption of electronic medium? We have not. We've added more jobs in different spaces, different parts. So I remain hopeful. There'll be new ideas, new thoughts that'll come through, which will create new businesses and new jobs.
What, in your view, is the next groundbreaking innovation that is going to come from India and make an impact on a global scale, Mr. Mittal? We are very good at adopting global technology. We do it at a lower cost. We're known for that. But what do you think is the innovation that will now come from here as we move into India's century?
I think India, because of, again, it's a very large workforce which is developing here, right here, we will be serving the world right from here. And I heard Commerce Minister talking about gone are the times when we were clamoring from H-1B visas. We'll do a lot of stuff from here because now the digital world allows you, now the AI allows you to actually serve the globe right here from India without displacing people. And our frugal innovations in the area of especially digital field and also biosciences is going to serve the world. So DPI, for example, I think the whole world, especially the global south, is clamoring now to pick up India's DPI, make them fit for their own countries, and start to launch it there. India will have tremendous amount of work coming through for intermediate companies, software companies, system integrators who will go and put up these DPI stacks in country after country in Africa and many other parts of the world. Similarly, our health and biosciences, I think that frugal innovation that is happening here, where the cost of medicine, the cost of healthcare will be lowered for the entire globe, will also be here. Last, I would say, India, despite being a developing nation, has been at the forefront of space technology. We make our own rockets, we launch our own rockets, we make our own satellites. Yes. I think that's another area where India will take a pole position.
And just last question to you, Mr. Mittal, because I know you're on a tight schedule. What is exciting Sunil Mittal now? What is the next project or the next interesting idea that has you excited about getting up every day?
Well, I think we started with that. We need to take India to the globe. We have to showcase the Indian work culture, the Indian ethos, India's commitment. And I think that's what I am currently busy with. We are expanding in, Airtel into, or the Bharti enterprises into the global markets. We are moving into the UK. We will look at other opportunities around the globe and take the best from India and showcase it across the globe.
So you are truly taking the Indian business ethos global. Thank you so much, Mr. Mittal, for joining with us.
Thank you so much, sir, for that absolutely incredible conversation, how India Inc. is truly taking on the world. But moving now, Parmeshwar, if you think getting to work on time is hard, just wait till you hear how businesses navigate international aerospace. Well, spoiler alert, it involves less traffic, but more strategic altitude.
Well, to find out more about the opportunities that the Indian aviation sector holds, it's our pleasure to now invite Vikram Rai, CEO of GE Aerospace South Asia, for a keynote address.
Thank you. Honorable dignitaries, guests, and my industry colleagues, it is my honor to be speaking here today. As the Honorable Prime Minister said, in a world full of chaos, what is being talked about is India. The India story is being talked about. We are well on track to cross the $5 trillion mark. This is exemplary and a reflection of how much progress we made over the past few decades. I will start with a personal story. In 1986, when I was a 6-year-old, my birthday gift was a 30-minute flight from Delhi to Dehradun on a Dornier aircraft. My second flight was only in 2003 to college, Delhi to Nagpur, 17 years after my first flight. The Indian middle class is now taking their second flight within days of their first flight. This has been possible due to the strong and business-friendly economic policies of the government. Just to put things in perspective, India has approximately 800 aircrafts. Another about 1,500 aircrafts are on order and expected to be delivered over the next decade. Two of the world's largest aircraft orders, I repeat, two of the world's largest aircraft orders have come from Indian carriers. I believe this is just the tip of the iceberg, and India will continue this exponential growth in coming years. Consider these numbers. India has a middle-class population of about 400 million. US has a total population of 300 million. United States has about 7,800 plus aircraft. India has 800 aircraft only. India has 0.20 seats per capita. We are fast catching up to mature markets such as China, which is 0.7 seats per capita, and US, which is 4 seats per capita. Less than 5% of Indians have ever been on an aircraft, and about 85% of domestic traffic is within metros, which means that there is huge runway for growth. There is a strong infrastructure push. As our Honorable Prime Minister mentioned, the number of airports doubled in the last decade, and we will touch about 220 by end of this decade. I speak for the industry when I say we are committed to our Honorable Prime Minister's vision of Udan, Ude Desh Ka Aam Nagrik. We are ready for the challenge of connecting every Indian city, town with convenient, safe, and sustainable flight solutions. Indian airlines have already begun this journey. They have already run test flights with sustainable aviation fuel. As an engine maker, we at GE Aerospace have built new engines which are 10 to 15% more fuel efficient, less emitting than their predecessors. We are currently working on an engine design that will be about 20% more efficient than the current generation. GE Aerospace is a proud partner to Indian aviation industry for more than 40 years. We continue to be invested in India, focused in India. We have a Pune multimodal factory since 2015 that makes engine parts, components that are used by engines all over the globe. This year, we announced a $30 million investment into this facility to expand our production. This facility has trained over 5,000 polytechnic graduates in precision aerospace manufacturing skills. Later today, we will announce a $2.3 million global investment in skills, and a part of that will benefit polytechnics in India. Our engineers in Bangalore are researching on the next generation technology, and we are laying the building blocks of a robust supply chain ecosystem. In defense sector, we continue to work with Hindustan Aeronautics Limited. They assemble our 11M 2500 marine propulsion engines that powers Indian Navy carriers. They will soon manufacture the F414 military engine right here in India. The aerospace industry is an important driver of Indian economic growth and flag bearer of our local manufacturing ambitions. We are making good strides in indigenous production of aircraft parts, commercial and defense, space exploration and cutting-edge defense technologies. The sector is creating high-skilled jobs and attracting high-value investments. At this moment, when I speak to you, over 900,000 people across the globe are flying with GE Aerospace technology under wing. This is a big responsibility, and we take that seriously. We at GE Aerospace are committed to our purpose, which is we invent the future of flight, lift people up, and bring them home safely. In closing, I will say, I cannot be more excited what India has to offer to the aviation sector and what this sector can do for India's economic growth. Thank you and Jai Hind.
Well, here's to lifting people up in its true sense indeed. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us with that keynote address.
And well, as we talk about businesses, big businesses and economic growth and how India Inc. is really propelling the country towards the 5 trillion mark, the race will be marked by disruption and innovation.
Indeed, it's about creating jobs, supporting healthcare, and yes, maintaining ethical standards as much as it's about technology, Industry 4.0 and artificial intelligence.
And
but
well,
what does the future of the Indian industry look like, Vedant?
Absolutely, Parmeshwar. As we said earlier, it's all about disruption and innovation. And to talk about that, we would now like to invite Baba Kalyani, Sunita Reddy and Ajay Sriram for a discussion on disrupting industry, but for good, with NDTV's Vishnu Shom.
Now, from the bustling streets of Mumbai to the tech hubs of Bengaluru, India stands on the brink of an industrial renaissance. Today, we look into the crystal ball of manufacturing and healthcare, where innovation meets tradition, not just Indian solutions for an Indian requirement, but also Indian solutions for the world. So imagine a future where Indian industries not only adapt, but lead globally with green technologies, AI-driven solutions, and a workforce brimming with talent. Join us as we explore in this session how India is poised to redefine manufacturing technology, the services sector, healthcare, in becoming hopefully a beacon of sustainable growth and unparalleled ingenuity. The session is called Disrupting Indian Industry for Good, and we've got an absolutely wonderful group of panelists: Baba Kalyani, Chairperson and Managing Director of Bharat Forge; Sunita Reddy, the Managing Director of Apollo Hospitals, the Apollo Hospitals Group; and Ajay Sriram, the CMD of DCM Sriram. Thank you all very much for being with us. Mr. Kalyani, let me come to you first. A couple of years back, whenever one thought about made in India, it was made in India for India, right? That we need to make our own things, whether it's high-tech products, whether it's defense equipment, but look, we are the consumer. I think the paradigm changing for the good, and this being a disruptor, is the fact that in certain areas, not least of all defense manufacturing, we don't just have to manufacture for India. We manufacture to what anybody anywhere in the world wants. We deliver it at a price point, and we manufacture it at a quality with guarantees which are second to none. Would you say that when we use the words disrupting industry in your sector, that's where India is?
Yeah, first of all, I'm very happy that this panel has come to discuss manufacturing. Well, it's something that nobody seems to want to discuss. And without manufacturing, I don't think India can achieve its Viksit Bharat objectives that Honorable Prime Minister talks about. So I'm very happy to be part of this panel. First of all, I think what you say is very right. If you take our own business, we've been exporting and manufacturing products for almost every automotive OEM in the world for the last 20 years, and critical components, and manufactured in India and selling it in Europe, in North America, in South America, sometimes in Japan, sometimes even in China. So the disruption in manufacturing will start happening now with the advent of all the new technologies that we see coming in. There was a lot of, Mr. Sunil Mittal talked about AI and its use and misuse of AI. Well, let me tell you our experience as far as artificial intelligence is concerned in manufacturing. I mean, the way we see it is going to do three things. Number one, it's going to make a simple guy or an ordinary person become extraordinary because his knowledge level is going to go up suddenly in minutes. You ask 3 questions to ChatGPT AI in any technical issue and you get all the answers. So that's the first advantage that we see, and we see it happening in our plants. So All it means is that your productivity, your efficiency, your quality of product will go up dramatically.
Right.
That's first. The second thing that will happen is, yes, there will be a lot of efficiencies that will come about, especially in terms of management, how you manage. You don't need so many people to manage a business. You need much less people because you can get AI assistant, on your computer screen, which tells you what to do, what not to do. And for Indians, this has become very simple. I don't know, somehow we are very good at understanding a screen and understanding what's written on a screen. The third, the most disruptive part, but the most useful part for any population or any society is going to be the new industries that AI will bring in. And I will, since Sunita is here, I'll talk about in 1 minute on the medical side. The entire biotechnology will become bioengineering with AI. So it'll be more engineering-based rather than medicine-based. And I think India will lead that revolution.
Sure.
So a lot of new things will come out.
In fact, Ms. Reddy, I wanted to sort of come to you next. Medical, when we talk about innovation, it's such a huge term. Obviously, AI and innovation. Medical practices have innovation in many ways. One of the things I found fascinating in your group is re-engineering technology which already exists to ensure that you can spread it to people who need it while ensuring that there is no compromise in the quality of the equipment, right? How does that work?
So that's just started to work. And what we've done at Apollo is that we've signed up an agreement with IIT Chennai. And as part of our vision, it is really to re-engineer medical devices, which, at 1/10 of their cost. At Apollo 40 years ago, when we came to India, we really re-engineered the way healthcare was being delivered at 1/10 of the cost with the same clinical outcomes as the rest of the world. I think our next journey is to bring technology and healthcare together and biology together to make sure that we're able to do this, not just in terms of re-engineering medical equipment, but for looking for solutions for new diseases as well as the old, to probably make it more affordable to a large section of not just India's population, but to the world. So today we have patients from 147 countries coming to India. So I think our first goal is let's reach, we've touched 200 million lives, let's scale it to 500 million using technology, using AI, using chatbots as physicians, and then using drones to deliver medicines across India and handle the coal supply chain as well.
How has the drone business actually worked? Is it
works.
practical?
It is very practical. It works right now. I think Paul Rom, it alluded to the fact that and what we need to do in India is urbanization. We've not done it yet. It has to reach, has to reach scale. It has to reach villages. The only way to do it is to do it using technology. Part of it is that the penetration of internet has already happened. The second is that enabling the drones, and there's a licensing problem.
Right.
The technology works, we need to get the licenses in place.
Mr. Shriram, if we are talking about India's economy being at an inflection point, there's perhaps no sector in our economy more at an inflection point than agriculture. And we can't talk about manufacturing or health in isolation. Ultimately, we are bedrocked on agriculture. We are an agricultural economy still. And then there are all sorts of ideas about AI and how that might enhance innovation and how that innovation might enhance production. How do you see AI and technology enhancing the agriculture sector, which is a poor sector in so many areas? Can technology really make the jump?
Thank you, and thanks very much for inviting me for this program. I think the topic is very relevant. Disrupting industry for growth, for development is absolutely crucial.
Mm-hmm.
It's happened over the last hundreds of years. And I think in India too, it's moving rapidly, moving well. And I think it's good to see that now this sort of disruption is happening in all aspects of economic activity, not just manufacturing or medical or some of these restricted. In agriculture, if one sees over a period of time, the way developments are happening with the farmer and the knowledge the farmers are gaining now, the sort of exposure they are getting. One is, I think I must compliment the government for moving so aggressively with the Jam Trinity,
Right.
which they did many years ago, which gave a connect to virtually everyone in the country today. I remember we are in the sugar industry. I remember we used to actually give a written note to each farmer, and we have in our sugar factories 2 lakh farmers who supply us sugarcane. We used to give a written note to each farmer requesting him to give the cane on the second day or the third day at a particular time in the morning, afternoon, evening, etc. Today it's all done by WhatsApp. The connectivity has gone up so dramatically, it's made a world of a difference. And then secondly, I think what's coming up very positively is the transfer of technology to the farmer. Today, I'll give another example if I may. We have, as I mentioned, about 2 lakh farmers who supply us sugarcane. Our plant is in eastern UP, in central east UP. The average yield is about 60 tons, 70 tons per hectare. We have worked with a group of farmers. You will not believe the farmer which got the highest yield and won a national award got 275 tons per hectare.
Wow.
And made a net profit of 6.22 lakhs in 1 hectare because of this approach towards innovation, openness, doing things the right way. Today, what's even moving very aggressively, not only sugar but agri across the board, is where drones are coming in a very extensive manner, where they are actually now even spreading pesticides and fertilizers. We have technology which actually takes images of the crops and gives an indication of what is the quality of the crop, where is it, what is the stage of growth, how healthy is the crop, what is the expected yield of the crop, which can give a feedback to farmers. Another area which is growing rapidly, again, from the point of view of innovation and moving, which has moved in urban areas more, less in rural, is e-commerce. Today, a lot of our farmers and others farmers, because we are in the agri-inputs business also, we are seeing many of them are buying products of e-commerce. They don't have to go to a shop.
Right.
So developments are happening very rapidly. Though there is a long time to go, we have 14 crore farming families in India, and agriculture is a state subject. So each state has to take it up as aggressively as they think right, how they want to push it. But the good thing is that the interest from the farming community is high. They want to get better development, better growth. For, let's say, sugarcane, for instance, in the crop industry is, we have a contract with the farmer to buy. The contract model, if it develops further for other crops, I think the farmer will gain because they have an assured offtake at an assured price, and they have a connectivity with someone who gives them technology.
Sure.
So the yields go up. So, it's a win-win across the board.
Absolutely.
If innovation moves aggressively to disrupt the existing way of working of how farmers are generally working.
Mr. Kalyani, when you told engineers in your company, I want a gun, an artillery gun, which outranges every other gun in the world, I want it built at a certain price point, and the Indian Army has the most exacting, bracket the worst, standards of evaluation, almost impossible to achieve. How did they react? And how did you upskill people to actually reach that level of technological prowess? Because people can't just build guns, right?
Yeah, you're very right on what you said. But things like defense technology, doing it all yourself, it requires a lot of passion. It's not
risks. And risks.
And grit, yes. And courage.
Right.
Because it takes a long time, you're right. The whole testing procedure is long. The process is complex. But not only we were able to do it, we outdid it. Yeah. And today, India has never, ever even dreamt of exporting artillery guns. Today, we export artillery guns. We have the largest capacity to make artillery guns in the world. So we have come a long way as a country. And any country that wants to be economically strong, wants to be amongst the top nations in the world, has to also have a strong military capability. You know, if you look at the United States, it was built during World War II based on producing military hardware for Europe, for England and France, on the famous lease and lend scheme that President Roosevelt generated. It would be outstanding. I mean, if you just hear the figures that they made, in 4 years, the US made 384,000 aircrafts, 200 submarines, 180,000 artillery guns, and many, many more things. I mean, compared to what we are able to do today, compared to what they did almost 80 years ago.
Right.
And that's what built the United States manufacturing, became a superpower. That was the beginning of it. There's a beautiful book written on this by Arthur Hedman. But India needs to do the same thing. We have a lot of advantages today because a lot of new technological breakthroughs are coming in, AI being just one of them. There are many more. The whole digital technology is coming in. And no manufacturing company can survive without embracing digital, AI, IoT, and everything new that's coming in terms of technology. Second, I think India has to also create innovation in technology. We can't just copy what we get from outside. We now need to make our products, which the Western world will copy from us. That's the name of the game for the next 10 years.
Sure.
If you look at the last 25 years, India's GDP grew by almost 8 times, last 25 years. But its manufacturing also grew only 8 times. And that will not work going forward.
Right.
The GDP will grow 8 times and reach 30 trillion or maybe 35 trillion or whatever number. There's so many numbers floating around. But the manufacturing needs to grow 1.5 times of GDP. So the manufacturing needs to grow 12 times, 12x. And that's not easy because in many areas of manufacturing, you need to generate strategies to create exponential growth. Linear growth won't work. And that's the challenge in front of us. But at the same time, the feeling one gets today when you meet young people who are entering the manufacturing game, young entrepreneurs, they are like athletic Gavaskars.
Young people are like Sunny Gavaskar.
Yes, they are like athletic Gavaskar, the opening batsman, with a lot of confidence, wanting to go in and play, and they feel they can make it happen. Because it's going to be their game. It's not the game of old guys like me. And I'm very confident that India will get to that game.
Mr. Reddy, one of the problems in India, and I think this is true across the board, is a lack of fundamental research at so many levels. Certainly in the healthcare sector, we are wonderful in manufacturing. We are the pharmacy of the world. It's not just a cliche, it's a fact. But then in terms of, but we are wonderful replicators of, for example, medicines and vaccines, which have been designed by others. How do you see India's economic growth being closely linked to research and innovation?
I think we have a long way to go. So if you look at the current situation, 0.7% of our GDP is spent on research. And this has to change. And I'm not sure if the government is ever going to mandate it, but I think the private sector must take on this initiative and have the energy to do so. So, which is why, I earlier spoke about IIT. As we look at research, we also need to think why it's important for India. The Prime Minister spoke about, in 2047, we will be the leading economy. It's predicted that our GDP will be $55 trillion. If you look at today, if you look at the price of oil going up by $10 is a negative 0.4% of GDP. It takes off 0.4. But if you look at the cost of disease and the disease burden, which could be $3 trillion because Indians are genetically predisposed to cardiac diseases, they're predisposed to strokes, they have now cancers rising at 20%. So unless we do the right research to make sure that we have our own APIs and integrate with what we have, which is really a lot of good practices from Ayurveda in keeping people healthy, I think this sort of research will really produce large-scale benefits, and we can look at a healthy India. So it's really, like he said, AI, aspirational India, using artificial intelligence, and using human intelligence from what we've learned in the past and bringing it all together, I'm sure will make a huge impact and at least save $3 to $5 trillion of our GDP.
Mr. Shriram, we cannot talk about disrupting industry without disrupting energy and the energy sector. There are many options. Green hydrogen is certainly one of them. But another interesting option which we thought we'd talk about is ethanol. Why is ethanol as a fuel something that you find attractive with a lot of future?
I think ethanol is what they call a green fuel, because it's the energy source for that is the bagasse which comes from the sugarcane crop. So it's green fuel for one. Secondly, pollution levels are much lower than if one uses refining oil, etc., going through that route. And you can mix that directly with petrol as of now, and government is talking about doing it with diesel also. I think the positive side is that in the last 5 years, the government has moved very proactively in trying to push ethanol blending, which was 5-6 years ago in the range of 1 or 2%. Today it's almost 15%. And they want to take it up to 20%, which is a good direction to go to. In Brazil, etc., they are having 100% ethanol vehicles. So one can go to that extreme, but that requires a technology change on the automobile side also. But at least as moving forward, that's a positive direction to go to, which government is moving. They have just recently amended the policy where earlier on you could use only a type of molasses, C molasses, which could be used for making ethanol. But now they say you can use juice, you can use syrup, you can use B molasses, C molasses, anything. You know, so that is really giving a push to ethanol. And that, firstly, as a cleaner fuel. Secondly, it reduces the import bill dramatically. I believe the import bill by the use of ethanol is already down by over 1 lakh crores a year, which is a very positive direction it's going towards. Government is now pushing where you can use broken rice, you can use maize, you can use wheat, you can use anything which has starch. So that can be converted to ethanol too. So that also is a positive way of looking at how to become more self-sufficient, how to have a cleaner fuel. Ultimately, end of the day, sustainability is an issue which needs focus and attention, and government is focused on that. Industry has to also get very aggressively onto it, which they are. But this is a direction where the government policy towards green fuel, green hydrogen similarly will be with green fuel.
Yeah.
The cost element of it is something which is at the moment government controlled. So we are, like we make ethanol, we sell it to the government at a predetermined price, which they calculate based on the sugarcane price, manufacturing cost, etc. So I think government is open and the policy is positive to move for blending more and more to make the fuel element for automobiles and for other vehicles cleaner than what it was day before yesterday.
Sure. Mr. Kalyani, when you sold your weapons, your gun systems and the like to Armenia, there must have been any number of competitors from the West saying you're buying from who? And how do you deal with that? Because it's a difficult industry. The competition is cutthroat, literally almost sometimes. So therefore, how do you convince people in markets who've never heard of India as being a defense manufacturer?
You know, I think there are some prerequisites for this. First prerequisite is that in defense, whatever you produce, you must have the intellectual property for that. Because if you didn't have it, you won't be able to export it. That's the first prerequisite. The second prerequisite is it needs to be better than the best in the market. And that largely happens because, I mean, in our case, it's completely digital. You've got a little bit of AI, not too much, but completely digital, completely programmable. You can keep it 5 kilometers away and fire it in any direction you want, any number of them. So it's a product that's probably not made anywhere today on the planet. Although everybody is moving in that direction. But we also have a price point that is very difficult for anybody to meet. For one simple reason, we control everything from the steel to the forging, to the heat treatment, to the machining, to computer systems and everything else. So that's a big advantage. But going forward, it's not just guns. India will make, at least I see the private sector making, large amount of products going forward, which are very sophisticated, high in technology, very high in terms of its digital and AI content, because our whole electronics industry is coming up. There's one thing that is lacking in this country in terms of building high-tech defense equipments, but I think in 5 years that problem will be over. I mean, I never thought 10 years ago that we could ever build an artillery gun in our plant.
Right.
But, today it's a reality. I mean, we are building 8 to 10 guns a month. So I think there's going to be many more things that are going to come. It's an industry that's going to generate technology, is going to generate capability in the country that's going to be used elsewhere. There's another offshoot that I'd like to say a little bit about. We talked about manufacturing and how the scale of manufacturing needs to be much higher. We need to grow 12x from where we are today. And it's not related only to automotive or, other things. But the primary thing in manufacturing, which Sunita talked about, is we need innovation. Without innovation, you cannot manufacture products. You take medical equipments. We hardly make medical equipments in this country, which we can truly call our own. So we need to innovate all these things. There are many areas where we don't make anything.
Right.
We are very happy with the GCGs, the engineering centers set up by multinationals here. But we shouldn't be very happy about it. We are happy about it because it provides jobs.
Sure.
But it's another form of colonialism.
Absolutely.
Okay? So I think we better learn to create technology on our own power.
No,
and that should be the dream of every Indian. Do it yourself. Do it for the country. Think of the country as a whole. That's the name of the game.
Ultimately, it's all about being happy, right? Mr. Kalyani is happy if he manufactures at a certain level of precision. You look at happiness from a holistic health standpoint. And when we were talking, I think yesterday or day before, you told me about the importance of setting up blue zones or areas where those who are elderly will be looked after in a more holistic fashion than perhaps exists right now, where spiritual healing would be part of healthcare as well. How is this in Apollo and for you a really big effort, one that stretches to a large percentage of our population? Is it financially viable?
You've given all the answers.
I have no answers, I'm asking the questions.
When you do something good, it's always financially viable. And that's my learning over the past 40 years. When you do something with a purpose, it always results in profits. But let's, for a moment, spend a minute on happiness.
Yeah.
Happiness is that moment of metacognition when you realize, that what you have is sustainable. It's not like when you eat an ice cream and you're happy. It's about when you're in a state of good health, you are happy because, like they say, first you can't have wealth without health. You can't have happiness without health. So really being in that ideal state of health is important. Understanding that happiness comes from the sustainable things in life. You're happy when you are at a wedding. You're happy at a family wedding. You're happy when you're with your family. So these sustainable events are really important in happiness. And we had the Bhutan Prime Minister here. I'm sure he'll reinforce that. Professor Paul Romner spoke about the state in USA. When people are so pessimistic, a life expectancy is going down. It's a state of happiness that's important. And I think by, creating this confluence of spirituality, cultural centers, communities, providing them with good health, most important with nutrition, and then focusing on, and crucial is focusing on preventive healthcare for the young, as well as looking after the elderly. We need to do this. They've done this in Japan, in Okinawa, and there was a study on this. I believe it's time for India to do this because, we always talk about 250,000 Indians leaving India and $40 billion of wealth lost.
Right.
But this is probably the right time for us to do this not just outside of the urban centers, get 1,000 kilometers of land, set up these blue zones where we look at health, happiness, prevention, because we understand that, your first heart attack comes not when you're 60, but at 30 because you're not prepared for your lifestyle is wrong. Alzheimer's, you see it at 70, but it starts at 40. Therefore, you can control who you want to be at 50 or 60 or 70 if you control how you behave when you're 50 or, when you're 30 or 40. So bringing together preventive healthcare, again, Ayurveda, bringing communities together, looking after our elderly, I think quality of life is very important. And all this contributes to happiness. We've studied this in Apollo. We've not yet rolled it out, hopefully in the next decade.
Well, I'd like to thank all of you very much for being with us. When we're talking about disrupting industry, it has to be, holistic. It cannot be just manufacturing. It cannot just be healthcare, or it cannot just be agriculture. It has to be broad-based, and it has to be based on a vision. And I think the industry leaders that you have on our panel today are all world beaters in their own right, with an idea which may be uniquely Indian, but I think the takeaway for me from this session is that these are all ideas which could be globally applied. Thank you very much for being with us.
Our next guest is said to be looking for a sweet spot, but in terms of cash flow.
That's an interesting choice of words there, Padmeshwar. We'd now like to invite on stage the Zepto co-founder, Adit for a discussion on delivering the future with our colleague Vishnu Shom.
Well, this is a session that I've really been wanting to anchor. It's not the first time that Adit and I have had a conversation. Adit and I had a conversation virtually in the height of COVID, when some of the work that Zepto did was absolutely incredible in terms of deliveries to homes, people being unable to get out. What his brand was able to achieve, and the industry that he's a part of, how that's prospering, is something that we really want to look at this evening. But from the vibrant streets of Mumbai emerges as, we can share a tale of youthful ambition and swift success. Adit is just 22, and he's somebody who's turned the quick commerce sector on its head with Zepto. The startup is now valued at over $5 billion. He dropped out of Stanford to chase a vision. Adit was then just 17 years old alongside Kaivalya Vora. They crafted a platform delivering essentials in minutes, redefining convenience. Their journey from Zepto's inception to 2021 to becoming India's youngest unicorn founders is not just a business story, it's a beacon for dreamers everywhere, proving that with innovation and daring, the future can be delivered today. Thanks so much for being with us. Question number one. When you told your parents at the age of about 18 that you were dropping out of Stanford, did they show you the door?
No, first...
Yeah, it's on.
Yeah, no, firstly, it's wonderful to be here. Thanks for that generous introduction. So, no pressure for the rest of the session. But to answer your question, I think, although it's, on the outside in, it looks like a very, sort of cliche Silicon Valley story. We dropped out of college to start a company. Actually, before we took that step, Kaivalya and I, we were basically tinkering around for about a year. And, as kids, we loved coding, right? We used to build out small projects for fun.
Yeah.
Growing up. But, in the middle of COVID, we didn't really have much to do. We were supposed to go to California to study. Obviously, all of us got put back into Bombay in that first wave of the pandemic. And we didn't really see the value in online education. So, we took a call to, instead of wasting a year of that experience, let's just take a year off and just tinker around and build some interesting stuff. Most of our peers at the time at Stanford had internships at Goldman Sachs or Google. We didn't really have any of that lined up. And we just took a call to start experimenting. And
But how did you think this up?
yeah, no, we were just, the two of us were sitting in Shehri Punjab and Andheri East. First wave of the pandemic, you couldn't get groceries delivered. The offline options were all usually shut down. The online options at the time were taking 6-7 days to deliver. And so we started with a WhatsApp group. And over the course of a year, we kept tweaking and iterating on the model, kept talking to customers, and started building out the first version of Zepto probably a year after we launched that WhatsApp group, and got to a meaningful scale, which is when we took that call to drop out, right, formally. And I think, with our parents, obviously, it was a shocking moment, right? I remember, Cavalier's mother burst into tears and said, "What have you done to my son? Right? You've brainwashed him." But I think we had some real numbers to go back off. We were doing at that time a few $1 million in revenue and growing fast, and we had just raised, or we were about to raise a large amount of capital. So we had some substance behind what we were doing, and there was real customer love. So we could take that conviction based, that call based on data, and not just sort of gut feel. I know the story is a little bit more exciting if it was just like a crazy idea, but at that time we had some numbers and we had some scale, and then we took the call. So at least, our fathers were a little bit more comfortable with it when they saw the numbers. So yeah.
So when you go to Cavalier's mother now and say, "Ma'am, my valuation is $5 billion," what does she say? Go back to school?
Yeah, pretty much she just says that, yes. She still says, "What a beautiful life you've given up on at college," but yeah.
I'm just trying to understand, why did you pick 10 minutes as opposed to 15 minutes for delivery or 20 minutes?
So, like I mentioned, we took a year just talking to customers. And, at Zepto, we're a customer company, right? That's the way that we call ourselves. And when we were speaking to customers at the time, most grocery in India is bought hyperlocally, right? Most of the people told us that, for them to really order multiple times a week, it had to be, seamless, as easy as going downstairs and picking up, fruits and vegetables, or picking up day-to-day packaged foods. And we took it as more of an ambition. Can we sustainably, structurally, at scale, do 10-minute delivery? We launched the first, micro warehouse or dark store in Bandra in Mumbai, and that's when we experimented with it. And we realized, after a few months of iteration, that hey, this is actually possible and scalable. And that's when we took upon ourselves to go to the extreme lengths. Like we didn't think there was anything more extreme than 10 minutes. And we said that let's push ourselves to actually deliver this for the customer. And like the last panelist said, right, like if you do something good, profits will follow, and that's what we've seen, right? Like, because the retention and customer love is so high, and largely because of that 10-minute delivery promise, we've been able to see some pretty incredible economics and scale in this model very quickly, which is why people are excited about quick commerce generally.
But in India, when it rains, it pours. Gurgaon gets flooded in 5 minutes, Delhi in about 10, and yet you promise 10-minute deliveries.
There's obviously some nuance to it, right? Like obviously, if it's raining heavily, then we don't deliver nearly as fast. And when you open up the app, you see a live ETA. So you might see 6 minutes, you might see 11 minutes, you might see 14 minutes. In a flood, you might see 24 minutes, 25 minutes when it's in a heavy rain situation, or maybe we can't service it at all if it's heavily flooded. So obviously it fluctuates, but the median today is about 10.6, 10.7, like what we're live tracking towards. So yeah.
We don't talk very much about gig workers, do we? And we should. These are the people who, in a sense, are, literally drive the company. I mean, it's a cliche, but they actually are the transporters. It's difficult. It's hot in India. It's cold in India. The conditions are difficult. The traffic is crazy. So how important are the people, the men and the women who are gig workers, who are part of your business?
No, absolutely. I mean, our philosophy is to add value to all our stakeholders, right? Customers, the workers that we have across the business, and obviously then shareholders in that order, right? And, we look at adding value to a delivery partner's life as a core part of the value proposition of Zepto. And interestingly enough, the more value you add to those delivery partners, the more retention that you have in that fleet, the lower your costs become, and the better your overall business outcome becomes as well. So we don't just look at, goodwill to delivery partners as a, social initiative. We look at it as actually a business objective, right? And, as a result of that, if you look at the way that we've, built out this delivery fleet, we've basically gone from 0 to 50,000 delivery partners that earn a livelihood on Zepto in 36 months, right? Effectively 50,000, people now have sort of, steady, stable, consistent income very quickly, and that's rapidly expanding. And how have we added value to their lives? From our perspective, we do things that we are proud of, like for example, giving them the ability to do doctor consultations, vehicle repair and insurance on their vehicles, even things like term insurance, right? We go a little bit above and beyond. We're constantly trying to innovate as a team. Like we've got a dedicated engineering and product team that's just constantly trying to figure out how we can add more value. So for example, when I speak to delivery partners and when our team speaks to delivery partners, one of the things they talk about is, cash flow, access to capital that's cheap. So we said, okay, instead of paying them every week, can we pay them every day? Can we pay them every hour, right? So we're going to like to even crazy lengths to solve some of their problems. And if we can't do that, then we partner with, let's say, an NBFC to give them lower cost of capital, and we negotiate on their behalf, right? And so, from our lens, we are always on the lookout to add more value to them. Obviously, there is a marketplace, right? There is, structural forces of demand and supply in the labor market. But we do try, our philosophy at Zepto is how do we unlock more productivity so that we can pay them more or pay them in a stable fashion instead of this race to the bottom where we constantly keep chipping away at their income. We don't think it's productive. We don't think it's sustainable. We think real efficiency unlock and then, sharing that efficiency is a real way to compound. So in a nutshell, everything from, the basics from health insurance to vehicle insurance and other benefits all the way to, cash flow visibility, innovations on, how we pay them and solve for, day-to-day problems, all the way to, new things that we're trying to figure out, like, giving them pure play flexibility to work, even if they want to do, let's say, if you're an MBA student and you've got 2 hours in the afternoon, can we create a gig worker style program for you to give that MBA, an income of 8,000 rupees a month, if not a full, 20, 25,000 rupees a month, which still makes a huge difference. We keep trying to do these innovations to add value, and genuinely we're good faith. And the last thing that I'll mention, sorry, is that, even with stakeholders in the government, right, we are always, open to feedback and suggestions. So, we work with state governments, and if they genuinely feel like there's a better way that we can add value, we're obviously open to it with, like I mentioned, the real constraint of demand and supply and labor that we have to all adhere to, right? But yeah.
No, so when you look at AI and the way the technology is improving, where do you see, for example, for me as a user, the interface change, let us say 5 years down the road? How would it be easier for me, and how would it possibly be premised on 6G coming into India?
That's a great question. So, for us, what's a little bit interesting about our company, and you'll see this with most of the startups, is that we have that Silicon Valley product and tech DNA. So we have like a high-performing, engineering and product team that we've built out pretty methodically in Bangalore to be able to genuinely build like real systems that can add value on data science and artificial intelligence. So for example, we have an advertising business for, let's say, the Unilevers and Procter & Gamble's of the world to bid on search keywords at Zepto and to get like ad placements live on the platform. And we're making hundreds of crores of revenue of that. That's pure bottom line because it's just advertising. And that engine that we built in-house, that we call Jarvis internally, all the, the ranking engine, the bidding and attribution on that ad stack, all of it is powered by data science and machine learning models. And we built all of that in-house, and it's taken us some time to do it, but we built it relatively quickly. Or for example, to your question, as a user, what's different for the user today that we can actually do with data science and machine learning systems? So search is one of the biggest things that we focus on. So how can I just look at your search history and personalize results for you so that you are getting relevant products, right? If you sit in Defense Colony versus if you sit in West Delhi, there's a difference in what you want to see, right? If you've got an iPhone versus you have an Oppo phone, there's a difference in what you want to see, et cetera, right? If you've looked at feminine hygiene products, and that means you're probably a female customer, can we push more products that are more relevant to you? So constantly building that relevance to make the user's buying experience better. And then the last thing that I'll mention is, there are interesting things that we're even doing on our selection. So how can we predict store by store, micro market by micro market, what a customer would want, looking at the tens of millions of data points that we have historically, and that's actually helping us improve our selection. That's helping us get sourcing leverage to improve our prices. So everything from the search and recommendations to the advertising business to the supply chain. There's a lot of machine learning that we already use today. And then down the road, as we speak, for example, we're working on a generative AI solution on customer support, right? So Instead of waiting for 30 to 45 seconds for a human being to respond to you, why don't you wait like, 2 seconds and then a generative AI chatbot will respond to you and do a better job, candidly, than even a human could do in that format. So we're working on it, and we think it'll add real value to customers.
What's the average age of Zepto?
The age of a Zepto customer?
Yeah, of your workforce.
For workforce, corporate workforce would be around 29 or so.
So you're still younger than your average workforce.
Very much. I'm younger than the interns. I keep getting that. I keep getting that feedback. But yeah.
So how do people in the workplace sort of deal with you? They see you as this 22-year-old boss, who's 22 is like old for you. You started when you were much younger. How does that dynamic work?
Well, I think the culture that we're building at Zepto is fairly substance-based, right? We're pretty methodical, rigorous supply chain style culture on one hand, and then on the other hand, you've got this like technology and engineering culture that's very aggressive and innovative. But it's all rooted in one key thing, which is execution excellence, right? And that's the one thing that we've believed in since day one. And I think it's taken some time, but with the team that we have, and candidly, like you mentioned, most of the people the people that report to me are mostly almost double my age, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'd say are some of the best executives in internet in India today, right? For example, the CFO of Myntra, who's now our CFO, or top tier, tech leaders from the Flipkarts and the Amazons of the world, right, that have joined Zepto. They report to me, and I think it's taken time, but hopefully Keval and I have been able to prove our ability to add value and go deep into the details and actually run tracks rigorously ourselves and execute. And I think there's a mutual respect of that, execution and strategic thinking that comes from the top management team and us. And that's basically what's ended up happening. So, it's substance-based. Hopefully we've shown some substance so far, not all the way there yet, but I think, the team has a little bit of conviction that maybe Adit has some idea of what he's doing. And so they give me that leeway.
No, I'm sure they do. Expansion, obviously, key on the cards.
Right.
And that comes with a whole set of challenges because every market is different. And, markets for you are tiny. I mean, you don't necessarily look at a state as one monolithic form,
Right.
So how do you actually decide to expand?
Absolutely. So I'll give you a little bit of history, right? We've had a pretty interesting journey at Zepto. We've gone from 0 to about 10,000 crores in volume in 2.5 years. So fastest growing internet company of all time in Indian history. And we're very proud of that. And even on that base of over $1 billion in top line, we're growing pretty rapidly even as we speak, expanding into new markets. So for example, in the past 90 days alone, we've launched cities like Nasik, like Chandigarh, like Jaipur, like Lucknow, like Coimbatore. So, we are actually launching new cities as we speak. And, the framework is straightforward, right? We start city by city, what's the descending order of priority? We're looking at e-commerce data, we're looking at food delivery data, we're looking at, all the data that's available out there on population density, et cetera, whatever we can get our hands on that's publicly available. And we've ranked cities, and we've done this exercise a while ago. And then in descending order of priority within the cities, then there's a fairly rigorous process on micro market by micro market, what do we launch? And so we've got a network design team that's just dedicated to that. And we're looking at, again, we have an algorithm that looks at a few data points that we can plug into our model, right? Like, for example, let's say how many restaurants do we see in this micro market as an indicator of consumption, or how many high rises exist here? What's the average flat per society complex that we see, et cetera, and then obviously some subjective data, and then we rank all the micro markets within the city, and then we try to prioritize them. But at this point we're expanding pretty meaningfully, so wherever we can get our hands on a property, we move fast there. But it's a fairly methodical, boring process that we've built out over time, and so for the past 18 months or so, we've obviously been slow on expansion from a geographic perspective. Obviously, within our existing markets, we've grown pretty rapidly, largely because capital was difficult to come by. 2022, 2023, we were constrained on the ability to invest in capex and launch new stores. But obviously now we've proven the economics to a great extent. We've been able to raise capital, and now we're expanding pretty aggressively geographically.
Absolutely incredible story. But before you leave, one last question. How at the age of 22 now, do you deal with the fact that you're a phenomenally wealthy human being? you run a company with a market valuation of $5 billion, and that I believe is set to go up. Does that affect you, your lifestyle, or do you just keep working and pegging away with ideas?
Look, not much, candidly, right? I mean, we started this company without the intent of starting a company. Both Keval and I just were really excited about building interesting things, and we love what we're building. Like, we work like crazy. The people from my team here that know, the way that we work, but we just are genuinely so excited about what we're building. And I'll tell you what actually motivates us, right? It's not really about, money or personal wealth, because candidly, working like 80, 100 hours a week, we could have probably worked half of that with a lot less stress and still been doing fairly well, right? At a certain point, money becomes inconsequential. But what's exciting to us, and I think what's the theme of this entire summit, is that, if you look at large internet outcomes globally, in the US or in China or in, parts of Southeast Asia or in Latin America, people have really built companies that have gone in the span of a decade or a decade and a half, have gone from 0 to 70, 80, 90 billion. I mentioned that last time we spoke as well, right? Very large outcomes where companies generate hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions of dollars of cash flow, like world-class companies in internet like Uber or Airbnb or Coupang or Mercado Libre in Latin America, or obviously the Chinese companies, Meituan, Pinduoduo. And candidly speaking, and we have to be open and honest about this as a startup ecosystem, we've not really built a world-class internet company of that scale in India to date, right? We don't really have a company that does $1 billion of free cash flow and has compounding cash flows at scale and has created tens of billions of dollars of value, with one or two exceptions, right? But really large outcomes, still yet to be seen. And we think we have a shot at really building out an exciting company. And if we do it, there's a huge amount of value that we'll add, not just to shareholders, capital markets, but to the startup ecosystem at large. Like if Zepto and companies like, for example, Zomato, build very large outcomes, $60, $70 billion outcomes, and are generating thousands of crores of cash and compounding, then the entire startup ecosystem, we think, will 5x, 10x from here. I mean, if you look at, candidly speaking, a city like Shanghai today has a larger startup ecosystem by market cap than the entirety of this country, right? And we don't want that to continue. We want to 10x from here, right? We don't want to grow 20% a year from here, right? And that's the excitement and promise of India. And so we think if we set the flag for that, it can be like a Flipkart moment all over again. So that's basically what really keeps us excited and working the way that we're working. So that's.
So you were 19 when Zepto became a unicorn, right?
Something like that, right?
Something like that. Well, I'd like to thank you very much for being with us. Adit Palicha is the youngest unicorn founder in the country, and that remains the case, not just when he was 19. Zepto has a market valuation of $5 billion, and that's something that's likely to rise. It just goes to show the spirit of the courage and the conviction that he had in his ideas, and to chase a 10-minute model, which most of us would say is impossible. And look at where he is as a young person, deciding to take this by dropping out of college, and that also Stanford. But it is absolutely incredible to have you over here today, and thank you so much, and all the very best for the future.
My pleasure. Thank you so much. Very kind of you. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you. Come.
What an absolutely extraordinary story Adit has, and truly emblematic of what India's growth story and India's startup story has been like, Parmeshwar, isn't it?
Absolutely. He may not have landed that internship like his peers with Goldman Sachs, but look at where he is now. But ladies and gentlemen, what an exhilarating morning so far. We'd like to now invite you all to join us for lunch in the Shah Jahan Hall.
And of course, we have a power-packed afternoon and evening session starting with the Honorable Prime Minister of Bhutan. We look forward to seeing you right here.